I believe we've got everybody here. If you wouldn't mind stand with me, please. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Mr. Colbert will give our invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray.
Father, we come before you tonight just asking for wisdom as we make decisions for the city, Lord. We ask your blessing on this city and on our mayor and his staff and of all the men and women in armed forces, Lord, that serve us every day. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I want to call this meeting of the Springdale Planning Commission, June 15, 2018, to order. Roll call.
Gary Compton.
Here.
Roy Coper.
Here.
Vivi Haney.
Here.
Shannon Mueller.
Here.
Peyton Parker.
Here.
Kevin Parsley. Aaron Pinato.
Here.
Brian Powell.
Here.
Dale Tyler.
Next item is our approval of minutes.
It has been brought to my attention that there are some corrections on page 22 and 23. Statements attributed to Sarah Sparkman should be attributed to Jones. And minutes be.
We have a motion for Ms. Haney for approval of the minute. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Who did the second?
Roy. Minutes passed as approved with the corrections. So our first item will be our tabled items. It'll be PP 18-01 Oasis at 56th Street, west side of 56, south of County Line Road. We have a waiver of subdivision requirements presented by Engineering Services Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Apple with ESI. We brought this rezoning request last meeting from SF1 to SF2. We've since redesigned the subdivision to meet SF1 as the current zone, 80-foot wide minimums. We've also received approval from Elm Springs for the western 5 acres for RSF4, which basically is the same lot sizes as SF1 in Springdale. So we're here asking for your approval.
Staff comments.
Street names will need to be provided and approved prior to final plat acceptance. All utility easements and building setback lines have to be tied down. All offset easements must be obtained prior to approval of construction plans. All comments from the utility companies and other city departments must be addressed prior to approval of construction plans. A dedication of right-of-way will be required to meet the master street plan. The current street widths and right-of-way do not meet the master street plan. You have chosen to put into this subdivision wider streets than what our minimum will allow. I mean, we could go
Correct.
narrower streets, but you chose to do the wider streets
Correct.
with a 50-foot right-of-way.
50-foot right-of-way,
and a
30-foot
street.
street.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There are some, well, I guess I have one question about how is sewer being provided to those lots in Elm Springs?
The city is going to bring their force main system to these lots.
The city of Elm Springs?
Elm Springs, yes.
Okay, okay. There are some engineering comments that are being reserved for comments for the construction drawings, and I'm not going to go through all of those. Those are standard engineering comments unless somebody has a question about those of what was sent out, or unless you guys have a question. The only other issue that I think we need to address is the variance that you're asking about not using flowable fill in the roadway cuts, and we need to take that as part of this
We do. It needs
request.
to be.
And we'll probably need to address the variance request first. And then the other waiver you have is not to do street improvements to Ball Street.
This is this is
Wrong
56th
one.
Street.
56th
Yes.
Street, wrong one, because it is included on the current bond program.
That's correct, yes.
And you will be dedicating the necessary right-of-way that's needed for that, but the improvements will be done with the bond program itself.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
I don't know that this end of the bond program has been approved to do this portion. Right now, it's my understanding we're only doing up to Elm Springs Road, and the mayor's sitting over there, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. It is on the master street plan. If that is not picked up and completed with this bond program, then you would be responsible to do the street improvements? Or do you want to go ahead and discuss the waiver all at the same time? And the mayor may want to comment on this too.
You're right, Patsy. We hope that, that the bond money will be sufficient and that we can at least carry the improvements to Jean George or 56th all the way to County Line Road. That's our plan. We don't have, none of that's designed yet, but that's our plan. We just can't, until we see how the money goes, we can't write it in blood right now.
They were asking for a waiver based on the fact that it was included on the bond program. I just want to make sure the record indicates that it's on there, but it's not.
Is there a way to do that conditionally, or, I mean, I'm 95% confident we're going to be able to build past that.
Well,
you
the
know,
issue
to-
will have to come up before you get a final plat approval. It's whether either the street improvements have been in place, it's part of the bond program, or a waiver is granted, and we can let it ride until then.
We'll just have to work
So
through that.
that'll give us a
but
little bit more time to know
Yeah.
where we are with that, if that's okay with you guys.
It's not something I'm real worried about. I think I think we're going to be past that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as long as y'all understand, that's the situation where they
Yes.
may have to come back when you get the final plat approval if something has changed in that timeframe.
Understood.
Do we have any comments from the audience? To the commission?
Okay, I think Brad wants to address the flowable fill. Is Brad here?
You're both upstairs.
Okay, is that him
So-
coming?
There is an ordinance in place that requires flow fill for all crossings under city streets, new city streets, existing city streets when you cross. Talking with Brad, as long as our trench width is wider than 18 inches, so that we can get a compactor in there to compact the Class 7 base, as we've done in the past, that will be acceptable.
Okay, I do know he sent me an email, he wanted to address it tonight,
That's fine.
so we really need to address that situation. That's an issue that we could address. We can go ahead and
I think the
and act
main
on the
issue,
waiver and
yeah, was the smaller trench widths for service lines, that you can't get a compactor in and you can't compact the gravel, and that's why the flow fill was.
Okay, you're about
Be-
this far over my head with all that kind of stuff, and it's not, I know enough engineering to be dangerous, but not enough that he's coming. We'll let him address it and make sure we've got that.
Until Brad gets here, do we want to talk about, do we have any discussion on the other waivers?
Yeah. The only other waiver is that street improvements, that requirement of it, and then,
So, my question on that is that just a practice that we have, that if it's on the bond program, waive that?
that's what we've done in the
versus-
past, if it's on the
okay.
bond program, as
Okay.
long as they dedicate the right-of-way for the street
Okay,
improvement
so it
itself.
will be in turn for dedication of the right-of-way?
Right, they have to dedicate the right-of-way and all that, yes, that would be part of it. And Brad's here if he wants to address the flowable.
Yes, I understood that the flowable fill waiver was being pulled from this, and apparently not. The city council added flowable fill for
You're gonna have
trench.
to be closer, because your voices must be much softer.
The flowable fill issue is part of an ordinance passed by the city council last year to try and improve our roadways where we have street cuts. That's normally addressed during the planning, the plan review process, construction plan review process, not part of the preliminary plat.
Okay.
So I would ask that you all not approve a flowable fill waiver for this, or quite frankly, any in the future.
Okay.
Okay?
That way, we have it on the record of why we're not taking any action on that request, so, okay?
Any other discussions on the waiver presented? May you entertain a motion?
Waiver's actually, yeah, it's a motion, because it has to be recommended to council.
This is a motion on the subdivision requirements, but not,
With the subdivision requirements of street improvements, because part of a subdivision requirement is to do the street improvements to adjacent streets to master street planning standards. They're asking for that to be waived because it is on the bond program. And
in exchange for the
Dedication of the right-of-way.
dedication of
Right.
the right-of-way.
Right.
But this
And
is
this-
not including that other flowable fill.
This needs to
No.
include, well, this is, they're requesting a waiver for street, sidewalk, road improvements in through that area, so that flow fill needs to be included in this waiver.
Well, I think Brad is saying that it doesn't, because the first request was that street, sidewalk, and street improvements for 56th Street, which we
Right.
just talked about. Brad's position was on this flowable fill requirements, that doesn't require any action or ask you not to take action on it. And then the other waiver is to make sure that they are allowed to use the 30-foot street back-to-back with the 50-foot right-of-way. Those are the three things that are
Okay.
included in this waiver request. So we would be doing 2 of the 3 and taking out the one on the flowable fill. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So my motion is for the 2
Okay.
that we've discussed.
Motion by Ms. Haney,
Second.
second by Mr. Colbert. Roll call.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Panado,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes. Motion passes. Have a motion for the,
I'll make a motion
Preliminary
to
plat.
approve,
motion by
subject to
Ms.
staff
Haney,
comments.
Second.
second by Mr. Colbert. Roll call.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parsley is not here. Yeah. Okay, Parker,
Yes.
sorry about that. Panado,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes, passes 6-0. 7-0.
Thank you.
Debbie?
Yeah, he was not, Compton was not called.
Pardon me?
Compton was not
Dr.
called.
Compton.
Compton, you can vote too.
Yes.
There you go, you were at the top, I missed you. You started the last time though, sorry. Won't happen again.
Motion passes. Do you need to have anything else on that?
Yep.
You need to.
He's waiting for the next one.
Next on agenda is 18-02 Ramsey Place subdivision submitted as Ball Street subdivision off Ball Street north of the intersection of Ball Street and West County Line Road. We have a waiver of sidewalk requirement presented by Engineering Services Incorporated.
Thank you, Jason Apple with ESI again. Since our last meeting, we've been to council. Action was taken to overturn the planning commission's decision to not approve the SF2 zoning. We're back tonight asking for approval of the subdivision as an SF2 zone with the similar request of waiver Ball Street improvements as it's on the Bond Street or the bond program for the improvements with the park. So I'll answer any other questions.
Staff comments?
As Jason said, the property must be rezoned. The council overturned the planning commission's denial, and the ordinance to rezone it will be at the next council meeting. Street names will need to be provided and approved prior to final plat acceptance. All off-site easements must be obtained prior to approval of construction plans. All comments from the utility companies and other city departments must be addressed prior to approval of construction plans. Dedicate the right-of-way as per the master street plan. And the street reflects you want to use the 50/30 rather than the narrower street widths.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, you indicate that this project is also included on the bond program as part of the park improvements, and we're doing both sides of the street? Because normally we would just be doing the side of the street, and I ask this so that
Yeah,
everybody
I understand.
understands.
Yes.
That we would only be doing the side of the street adjacent to the park. We're gonna do both sides of the street, the full width, or just this right here?
I believe we're gonna have, in order to do the project correctly, we're not gonna be able to do just half the street. We're gonna have to do the full street. Now, the Elm Spring, the side on Elm Springs Road, we're certainly gonna try and get as much partnership as we can, as much as they're able. So I don't know, I can't say for sure about sidewalks, but I'm confident curb and gutter on both sides of the street will be included.
Well, they would
in our
only
project.
be required to do the width of this piece of property to do curb gutter and sidewalks. So if it's just that piece,
Then it would be a sidewalk at the most, that if it plays out the way I think it will.
and again, we can address this with the bond program as it moves
Right.
forward when they get to final plat.
I think both sides of the street are gonna be on Springdale
Okay.
on this,
Okay.
around, on the property that runs along the park. on the west and the south side. So along Ball and County Line, where it runs along the park property and we're developing the park, we're probably going to be in a situation where we're improving the road on both sides of the road.
So we don't have the design for that.
It hasn't been designed yet at all. Well, neither had the 56th Street one been designed either.
So we couldn't build it and then match it because we wouldn't know.
Right. Yep. And so we're taking out the flowable fill request, and again, it's they want to do the wider streets with a wider pavement section and a wider dedication of right-of-way. So the waiver would be those two things, based on what the mayor said, in the different sizes in the road.
Do we have any comments from the audience on this issue? To the commission?
So how is this worded so that the sidewalks, if they have to do the sidewalks?
Well-
If the bond program does not include it, then they'll still have to do?
They'll have to come back and address it before they get final plat approval. Either the improvement will have to be done,
Okay,
the bond program has to pick it up, or their waiver would have to be granted at that time, when the final plat is approved.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we
this
still have one
waiver-
more step to make sure that it gets done before they get a chance to sell the lots.
Hopefully by then we'll know.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Entertain a motion for the waiver.
Make a motion on the waiver as discussed.
Motion by Ms. Haney,
Second.
second by Mr. Compton. Roll call.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Benado,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert.
Yes.
Motion large scale.
Make a motion on the large scale,
So it's a preliminary plat, subject
or
to
on the
staff,
Preliminary plat,
or
I'm sorry.
preliminary
subject to
plat,
staff comments.
subject to staff comments.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Haney, second by Mr. Covert. Roll call.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Benado,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Our next item is L 18-12, Tapestry and Hearthstone, 3109 East Robinson. Variance for modification of building orientation. Variance to allow 2 hammerhead drives to compensate for 1 access, presented by Chris Ball, Matt Laughlin, or Dave, presented by Bruce Adib Yazi. If I did it right.
Did awesome.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Bruce Adib, Vice President of Development for the Vecino Group. Not sure exactly the process you want to go through to look at what you want tonight. We have asked for a couple of variances. I have our architect, Matt McLaughlin, and our engineer, Dave Bodine, here. We did receive comments back, staff comments back today. Those look fairly straightforward. And I think I'm going to let Matt McLaughlin just talk a little bit about the 2 variances that we're asking for this evening.
Hi there, Matt McLaughlin. I'm a project architect with Vecino Group. We're asking for a couple variances on this large-scale development. First one being a modification to the building orientation. This type of development typically requires that the buildings be oriented more of a perpendicular nature to the property line. And on this plan you see here, just to orient everyone, north is to the right on this plan simply because it fit better on the sheets that way. So we're talking about the buildings on the east side of the property, which are parallel to the east property line. And we're asking for a variance to allow those buildings to maintain that existing orientation that we're showing in this plan. The reason we oriented them that way was to create a clustering effect with the buildings across the parking lot and to allow for more green space on the east side of the property and for more detention drainage flow on the northwest corner of the property. The second variance was to allow for 2 hammerhead drives to compensate for the fact that we have only 1 access to this property. We have had some discussions with adjacent property owners with the possibility of providing a second access drive. Those conversations are still in discussion, so we don't have anything solid with that yet. But our current plan, based on early discussions with the fire marshal, was that providing these 2 hammerhead drives on each property would allow a fire apparatus the necessary maneuvering clearances to bring a truck in and out of the property. So that was our approach as to rather than having 2 accesses to the site.
Do you have any other comments?
No, that's all I have, unless anyone
Staff
has
comments?
questions.
Need to pin all corners. All screening fences required in accordance with Chapter 56 show trees associated with the screen. All comments from utility companies and other city departments must be addressed prior to approval of construction plans. We need some clarity in the drainage reports. Other things are just can't use wattles, that kind of stuff. The sidewalk detail, you need to show it within the right-of-way. The lights must each be labeled with the required information on those. Handicap ramps are required. We need a copy of the HTD permit or authorization letter. And then the rest of the questions are about commercial or multifamily design standards. Can you explain to us the materials that you intend to use on this property and what kind of materials and the percentages of each?
Yes, ma'am. The majority of, well, not a majority, our intent is to hit the 50% requirement for masonry on the buildings. Our early designs had stone at the base that was limited to a height of about 3 feet 4 inches. That was not in conformance with the multifamily design standards, and in some discussions with planning staff a month or so ago, we received some suggestions from them on how we could approach some additional masonry. So what we've done is we've added 50% masonry on all facades of the building, which will be some type of masonry brick. We haven't selected a color yet, but the intent is that we will have a traditional red style brick for the lower half of the buildings, and then the upper half of the buildings would be a heavy gauge vinyl siding.
Okay, what do you mean by heavy gauge?
Typical vinyl siding is about 0.026 inches in thickness. Our application for our tax credits requires us to use a 0.046 inch thickness vinyl siding that's more of a commercial grade siding that's much more durable.
Aaron, can you zoom in or make those pictures at the top that shows the kind of material they're using a little bit larger? Because I think that's important to look at this. If this is the look that you're trying to accomplish,
Yes, ma'am.
I think we need to look at that and make sure we understand that part. Because it looks good.
Also, from the tax credit development side, this is a project that we will own for 35 years, own and operate. So we don't want to put something we're going to have to be replacing anytime soon.
Okay, and are you looking for those same kind of treatments around the windows that's shown on that? With shutters on both sides and the larger treatments around the window?
It is not the intent to provide shutters at this time. Our understanding it was not required by our tax credit application, and I didn't see a requirement for it in the multifamily standards. However, if it is a requirement, it
does
could
look
be
good.
provided. It does look nice.
It looks good. And then that vinyl siding or that, and it's the vinyl that has the vertical stripes in it around the windows on that, which
Yes, ma'am.
gives it a little different look than what we normally see. And then the next, where it's the blue, it's more of a, that's where the heavier gauge.
Yes,
Right, and then the bottom is the brick veneer that you're using on the rest of it.
correct.
Okay. And it does work out to be 50, right at 50%. Okay.
That is our intent.
The other question we have is about your lighting plan. What we are really looking for in a lighting plan is to make sure we do not have any dark areas. You don't show any pedestrian lighting along the walkways or any of that kind of stuff. Is that something that could be added?
Possibly. Our intent was to light all of the pedestrian walkways with our site lighting. We thought it would be less, well, from a security standpoint, it's more beneficial to light up the site than it would be to just light up the sidewalks because, for example, lit bollards really don't light up any area beyond the sidewalks themselves. And if it's from a security standpoint, it's far more beneficial for us to provide site lighting because we can cover a much larger area of the site that way. The fixtures that we have specified for this site, do you have a copy of the site lighting plan by chance?
Is it in that
Aaron's
PDF
going to
set?
look.
It should be in the PDF set. I'm not sure if it was included
Now,
or
do
not.
the buildings have lighting on at the front doors, or the porch lights, or
Yes,
the
ma'am,
ends
they
of the
do.
buildings have lighting on those? What we're trying to do is not create any dark areas in the complex itself that creates a safety issue.
Yes, ma'am. The front porches all have lights. Yeah, there we go. All of the front porches have lights, and the units that have a back porch have lights there as well. Not all the units have a back porch. Our two-bedroom units do not have one. However, I think only about 25 to 30% of our units are two-bedroom units.
Well, just looking at the sliding plan, I see some areas where it's not lit very well. On the back side of these buildings on the east side, you're creating dark areas between those buildings because there's no light back there.
That is correct.
Could there be something put on the building, and Danny may want to address this a little bit more, that we don't want to create areas behind the buildings that are dark where? That's correct. Yeah, Danny, you can elaborate on that. I know we've talked about that a lot.
Well, do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and the reason the multifamily design standards have pedestrian grade lighting is when we get elevated lighting, it tends to cast shadows off of objects when our trees get higher, and you don't really have that safety aspect that we naturally do. We actually create more hiding spots, more places of shadows for people to do stuff that we don't really want to be done. We want that to be kind of seen. So we want people to feel comfortable at their pedestrian grade to kind of have that light around them and not necessarily casting the shadows. So that's why we ask for the balance of the street lighting along with the low grade pedestrian lighting.
Danny, you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said. We've talked about in the past of having at least 1 foot candle of power of lighting for every square foot of the properties. We've had issues with other apartment complexes in the past. So I'd like to catch this on the front end.
Yeah, this just doesn't address that. It leaves a lot of dark areas on the site itself. I think we really need to look at upgrading the lighting plan to be in conformance with the multifamily design standards.
One thing to consider, though, as you're placing lights all around the buildings is a couple of things. The areas on the rear of the buildings are where the bedrooms are, right? So between the ones on the west side and the back side of the ones on the east side, that's where the bedrooms are. We sure don't want to have lights that are sitting out there providing light into the bedrooms at night, all night long.
I agree with that. I don't think we're asking you to do that. I think we're asking you to put the kind of lighting on that would make the site itself safe, so that if somebody's back behind the building, you can see them.
So some building-mounted lighting potentially could help with some of that. Also, the other thing to consider, if we put building-mounted lighting on the back sides of the buildings, it would be shining onto potentially on the neighbors' properties too.
Well, there's cutoff, there's
Right.
shields and stuff that can be put on those, and that can keep that from happening too,
So building-mounted lighting would be an acceptable option?
as long as it doesn't spill over to the adjacent property.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Entryway landscaping, you have landscaping along the foundation, but you don't show any entryway landscaping to each of the entryways of those. Pedestrian walk lighting is the other thing that we talked about, so. Those are our concerns.
I don't know if you have a copy of the landscaping plan. The landscaping is not shown on these architectural plans. These plans were solely for the analysis of the buildings themselves. Our civil engineers have provided a landscaping plan within their civil package that had detailed locations for all of the plants that are going to be around the perimeters of the buildings.
And Aaron's going to address that because we've looked at those too.
So to the commission, around the front of the building, they did get their foundation landscaping in, but on those pedestrian entryways where those sidewalks kind of funnel in, there's nothing along those, and we kind of have that requirement to kind of give that focal point when you're walking from the parking area to there. So yes, they did have their foundation landscaping around the buildings, and they had some of their parking lot landscaping, but on the internal pedestrian walkways, we were asking that they would put a little more on that. So.
And you didn't ask for a variance for any of those, for that aspect of it.
Correct. And regarding the landscaping, that I believe that may have just been an oversight and a miscommunication between myself and staff. That's a small area that we're talking about and a kind of a drop in the bucket on the overall landscaping plan. I don't think we have any problem with addressing that issue.
And you will resubmit that before we sign off on the plans?
Yes. Construction plans?
Well, you can't move forward with it until we sign off on the, on the large-scale development plan itself.
Okay, thank you.
Before you can get construction plan approved too, yes.
Any other comments? Did anybody in the audience have any comments to this matter? It's to the commission.
I just want to sum this up to say we're trying to raise the standard on multifamily. We're going to be picky on all of these projects to make sure we get good quality projects in all areas of the city.
To the commission.
So my question is on this modification of building orientation. The reason for that is not enough space?
You were saying you could get more green space by the way you orient these things?
Yes, sir. Some of the reasons were you can see on the northwest corner of the site, we have a fairly large detention area, and a lot of that water then has to drain along that east edge. So that building in particular, those two on the northeast corner in particular, have to be in that orientation for us to have the right amount of space, and we're required to have a certain setback from any kind of drainage and detention areas for our buildings. We have to have a 20-foot setback from all those areas. Second of all was turning the buildings at an angle like they are on the west side of the site. It looks almost equal. It looks like the drive is running straight down the middle of the site, but it's really not. And we just don't have the room on the east side to allow those buildings to be completely perpendicular.
And trying to create that cluster effect.
In addition to trying to create the cluster effect. And another reason was that since so much of our parking is right there straight down the middle, in the interest of keeping the buildings a little more accessible, the closer they are to the parking for handicapped individuals, the easier it is for them to access their building.
And the northern portion of this project is for 55 and older, right?
That's correct.
Right, so keep that in mind. Everything from that middle hammerhead to the north is for 55 and older too.
I
Why it's
guess my
separated.
concern when I see that is that they're trying to put too much on too small of a lot.
I can address that really quickly. I think I've got our numbers here. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but for this development, we were zoned MF12, and we are well under we're well under our unit requirement per acre, and we're also well over our green space requirement for this type of development. So it really wasn't us trying to squeeze more in than we're allowed. It was more about really just a spatial constraint in terms of some of the other ancillary things that are happening on the site.
Any other comments? We have two variances before us. Variance for modification of building orientation, variance to allow two hammerhead drives to compensate for one access, and the fire department is okay with these hammerheads, is that correct?
The hammerhead's to the north, and the central hammerhead meets the requirements, but it's greater than 750 feet to your second hammerhead, so you're going to have to make where you come in behind your clubhouse a hammerhead as well.
Oh, okay.
So yes, it meets the fire code.
Okay, thank you. What's the wishes of the commission to take one at a time or both?
Take them both together.
Both together?
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Ms. Haney. For both.
Parker,
Yes.
Panado,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
No.
Haney,
No.
Mueller.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 no. Variance is passed. Need a motion for large scale?
Make a motion for scale,
Subject to staff comment?
subject to staff comments.
Motion on the table, subject to staff comments. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Covert. Roll call.
Panado,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Next on our agenda
Thank you, Commissioner.
is a public hearing for conditional use. E18-14, Darrell Cousins, 101 East Emma Avenue, use 44, mobile vending on a site in downtown Form-Based Code Neighborhood Center Type 1 District, presented by Darrell Cousins.
Before he starts, let me make a few comments. This is in our downtown form-based code area, which dealt with a little bit differently than the way that we handle a regular C2 area or those kind of things, so keep that in mind. And so we're going to look at this as if it is in a downtown, as part of the form-based code. I think in the long term, we're going to have to do a whole set of new regulations for mobile vending, especially if we're going to cluster them in locations or if we're going to allow them in different locations. But for the time being, the only way we have to deal with these is through this conditional use process. So keep this in mind. This is in the downtown form-based code area. Okay?
State your name and address for the record, please.
Daryl Cousins, owner of Cousins Q and 101 East Emma Avenue. And I'm looking to put a food truck at that location to offer more food options for the Emma Street and the local employees that all work around there. So that's kind of what I wanted.
Okay. Staff comments?
One of the bigger things that we look at differently in this is that spacing requirement between mobile vendings that we have in a C2 district. We don't have that spacing requirement in the downtown. So the compatibility of this with the downtown form-based code indicates that the ingress and egress to the property is acceptable, the off-street parking and loading area is acceptable, the refuge and service areas is acceptable, the utilities are acceptable in that the adjoining structure has already made arrangements for the electric to be hooked up to it, and they will take care of all their gray water on a regular basis. There would be no screening requirements. The signage would be on the structure itself. The yard requirements are acceptable. The size and shape is acceptable, and it has general compatibility with the adjacent properties with the following conditions. May not operate between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. If the health certificate is required, display the health certificate in a manner visible to customers. No obstruction of pedestrian or motor vehicle traffic flow. No obstruction of traffic signals or regulatory signs. No vending upon a public way. No sound device that produces a loud and raucous noise in violation of city ordinance or violate any other city ordinances in connection with the vending operation. Sites to remain clean and free of paper or refuge of any kind generated from the operation of the business, with all trash or debris accumulating within 20 feet of any vending site stand to be collected and deposited into trash containers and must meet all fire code requirements.
Anybody in the audience have any comments to this? If you'll come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Greg Hager. I'm at 1944 Tuscany Avenue in Springdale. Actually, it was more just a question. Is there still a requirement? I checked into the food truck capability or possibility a few months ago, and there was I guess a code at the time about it couldn't be in the same location for more than 3 hours at a time before being relocated. Is that still?
And this is why this conditional use is being granted to them, so that they can stay at that location longer than 3 hours.
Okay, so
That's the process you have to go through if you want to do more than 3 hours at one location.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good luck.
Good evening, Kent Hirsch. I've been at 107 West Emma for several years. I think I've been downtown for 34 years. I've watched Kevin McDonald develop his property. He's got a nice hard surface back there. I think it would be an extraordinary improvement to have this food truck back there serving this barbecue. And, you know, that's the long and the short of it. I hope that my neighbors feel the same way. I believe they do. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? To the commission. I too think that this is going to be a neat deal for the city, and this will be a great way to help revitalize downtown Springdale. It's going to be really fun.
I have one question on the hours of operation. Is that the applicant's request that end at 10, or is that an ordinance
That's in the ordinance right now for the existing, that it close at 10 p.m. And I don't think you didn't have any problems with it closing at 10.
No.
He really wants to go home at night, I think.
I'm just
Yeah, I
saying,
think
there's
he
like
really
4
does.
bars right there, so I mean, you know, it could go past 10. I just didn't know if that was
Get your food early.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was our regulation or if that was their request.
Well, it is our regulation, and he didn't have a problem with it, so.
Any other comments? This will be a
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Ms. Haney. Roll call.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Panado.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
The staff will prepare the resolution, and if you would like, normally we go to the council meeting on the 26th. If you want it to go to the next council meeting, the mayor would have to be agreeable to put it on the agenda for the next council meeting to move it up. And so we'll visit with him and see if that's the
Okay.
case. Okay. Are you saying yes, you would do that?
Yeah, if you won't let me forget.
I will let you forget. Okay, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting because I know you're ready to get
All right.
moving on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is C 18-15 Foghorns 101 West Johnson Avenue, UU's 44 mobile vending on a site in downtown Form-Based Code neighborhood center type 1 district, presented by Lee Collins. Lee Collins. We will table this for the time being and move on to the next one. Next here will be a public hearing for rezoning. Our first item for this will be an R18-24 First Marshallese Full Gospel Church, 1799 Butterfield Coach Road from A1 to P1, presented by Randy Ritchie.
Okay, first we have a problem. We don't have all the information we need to hear the rezoning request. Unless Randy has brought with, is Randy here?
Randy cannot make it today, so my name is David Betueli. I'm one of our board at the church, at First Marshallese Full Gospel Church.
Okay, the problem being is we do not have all the information that we needed. We do not show that there was any notices sent out to the adjacent property owners. We don't have the white sheets that says you sent it out, certified return receipt requested. We don't have the certified list of adjacent property owners. So technically, we cannot hear this request tonight unless that information is provided to us that you went through that process.
All right.
Do you have any of that documentation with you?
Maybe you can give us some more time to talk to Randy, because
Well,
he's not.
Unless he can show us that evidence right now, we can't hear it. It'll have to be tabled, and you'll have to send out notices. We don't know if they've been sent out or not. We cannot hear the request tonight.
But is there? Are they going to reschedule our hearing for
Well,
the next?
the hearing will be next month, the first Tuesday of next month.
Next
But
month?
you need to get Randy to call us, because if he hasn't sent out the notices, it'll have to be done before it can be put on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
That's
Have
good.
Randy call the office and talk to Debbie or myself so that we can make sure, see what has been done.
All
Because
right.
we don't have any of that information.
Yeah, that's all we know, that we have to come for the hearing. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
This item has been tabled. Our next item will be R18-25 Ricky Allen Sharp Trust, 2060 Ivy Lane, from SF2 to A1, presented by James Crouch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Jim Crouch. Represent the petitioner here, the Ricky Allen Sharp Trust. This, as the chairman said, it's on 2060 Ivy Lane. It's about 17 acres. I think it's fair to say that the Sharp Trust has built a rather significant structure on that property, a very nice home. He noted that there are neighbors and people down the street who are able to have livestock on their property. So I know this is a bit, some people might say we're going backwards, because I know we usually go from agricultural to residential or commercial, so we're going from SF2 to agricultural, and the purpose of that is to allow Mr. Sharp and his family, who will reside there, to have some livestock, a few horses, a few cows. There are other properties that are zoned A1 adjacent to this property. To the west is a large tract that is zoned A1. Across the street, a little bit to the south and a little bit east, there are two tracts that are zoned A1. There's some more property down the to the west on Ivy Lane that is zoned A1, and which they do have livestock on that property. I'm going to pass some photographs just so you can get the lay of the land. And then, of course, along George Anderson Road and actually all the way along Clear Creek Road is all A1, actually down to Albright. So we think it's in keeping with the nature of the neighborhood, especially since he's built such a nice structure there, and it'll be consistent with what's going on out there now.
Staff comments?
The comprehensive land use plan indicates low-density residential use for the area. The rezoning request is not in keeping with the comprehensive land use plan as recommended for approval. And I agree, there's a lot of areas out there that are still agricultural that has single-family homes on it, but they come into the city as A1 property, and they weren't requested to be rezoned by the property owner to another use. And I cannot, in the time that I've been here, know of any time that we've gone back to rezone a property from a single-family use back to an A1 zone.
Any comments from the audience on this matter? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Kevin LaMarche, I'm 1912 Tuscany Ave in Springdale. I just have a few questions because it just seems odd, like you say, to go backwards to what to a different zone for agriculture. For an A1, which is pretty broad-based in terms of what its use can be, there are a lot of residential neighborhoods right around this piece of property. And as I understand it, the town of Springdale has purchased the property to the west, and that is actually going to be developed for a new school. So, I'm just a little concerned as to what animals are going to be, on this property, because basically once it goes A1, they can do anything. Could be anything from chicken to animal husbandry to large equine, everything. So that's my question and concern about this.
And just to clarify, the school district bought the property, the city didn't.
I may be wrong. I don't think that you can put chicken houses in the city. Is that right, Patsy?
In an agricultural district, you can.
Okay, well, he does not intend to have any chicken houses. Look, he's got, as you can see, he's got a very nice structure there. He just wants to be able to run a few cows and a few horses, and under the current ordinance, he can. I don't know how long it's been since there's been livestock out there, but I suspect it hadn't been too terribly long. And again, the large tract that's to the west, which has a very, very nice home on it, is agricultural, as are some very, very nice estate-like homes across the street. That's what we think we have, and that's why we would like for you to consider this rezoning. And no hogs, no chickens.
But Jim, I say it, and I'll say it one more time. If we rezone it to A1, whatever is allowed is allowed. And just because that's not what he's saying is going to happen doesn't mean it couldn't happen, because it's a rezone to allow those kind of things to happen. That's always my common statement.
Yes, sir.
This is actually what I came to talk about.
Okay. Could you state your name and address,
Yeah, my
please?
name is Greg Hager. I'm at 1944 Tuscany Avenue in Springdale. Kevin and I actually are on the board of the Enclave subdivision, which you see there is the subdivision right across the street from this property. So we actually are interested we think it'd be very nice if there were horses there, if there's some way to fence that. When I say fence, meaning if there's some way to limit the scope of this A1 code to basically say, hey, it's only allowed this purpose, but this is just too broad. As Patsy said, this would allow basically anything livestock to happen, which we can't stand for there. So if there was a way to potentially limit it to say you could have horses and that's it on this property, that would actually be very appealing to us. We have the Hunts right around the corner that have horses on their property. So, but we can't leave it open to this code because it would allow basically anything agricultural to take place, and that would be unacceptable. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think I'm going to say this, but it can't be limited. A1 is A1.
Right.
My recommendation would be perhaps looking at residential estate. Could have horses, correct?
An RE zone, let's see. I was just looking at
That would allow them to have at least horses
No?
and, no?
They could keep horses as a conditional use. As a use unit, if they rezoned it to RE, a use unit 36 is a conditional use as horses kept in residential areas. That would be one option, but there's not any option available to allow livestock, cattle and stuff as a conditional use in any zone, any residential zone.
Do you know when it was zoned for SF2?
Right, right. I don't know when it was rezoned. Aaron, can you look to see when that property was rezoned? I don't know if we've got that information with us or not.
But one thing about it, this nice building, a nice house out there, it proves that you can put nice houses on SF2 properties. So I want that to be known to everybody around here. Are we gonna wait on Aaron?
I don't know that, Aaron, can that something you get to quickly? May take him a few minutes to get, you want to take the time for him to look that up to see when it was rezoned?
I was just curious if the owner had it rezoned to SF2.
Jim, do you know
If
if
the
the
current
owner
owner-
had, the current owner had it rezoned to SF2, or did he buy it that way?
I bought it this way, and I didn't know at the time that I bought it that I couldn't put.
Could you come to the microphone, please, sir, and state your name and address?
My name is Ricky Sharp, and my address is 2060 Ivy Lane.
Thank you.
Where I've got the new home. I just want to put a couple of cows and a couple of horses. And I have no intention of putting hogs and chickens and anything else out there. My daughter likes to ride horses, and we thought maybe we'd have a calf or two to feed out and butcher each year. So that's kind of my ideal.
Well, in SF2, you could have horses as a conditional use right now without rezoning it. You could have horses, you have to come back and apply for a conditional use, and there's certain acreage that you have to have with that. You can't have cows on it, though, but you could have horses.
I understand that.
And, the problem we run into, it's not what you plan, but circumstances change. You could be gone tomorrow and sell or move, and that next person then could come in and do anything with it. So you can't rely strictly on what you tell us you might do.
I understand that, but if I had known when I purchased it that I couldn't do that, I wouldn't have built there. I just wouldn't have. So I've got a lot invested in it, and I don't want to do anything wrong, but that's what I would like to do.
Let me just, we're going to talk, I'm going to talk about this without having the benefit of talking to my client about it, but would it make any difference to the commission if we limited the amount of land that was, maybe I may have heard somebody say that, the land that was rezoned, so that, for example, it wouldn't be allowed, a chicken house wouldn't even be allowed there because of the space requirements. I mean, look, we know that Tyson or George's or whoever is not going to put a chicken house there. They wouldn't allow that. And that is not the highest and best use of the land for a chicken house, but it certainly makes sense, given his investment, to allow some horses and some cows. And I understand what Mr. Hager said, but there are some horses and cows out there in that neighborhood already. And so the people next door could put horses and cows. So I don't think this is a stretch to say that this should be rezoned to A1, but if it would make some difference, and if my client would perhaps agree to it publicly, then we might restrict it so that.
Well, you'd have to come back with a request to rezone a different portion of it to A1. Are you saying leaving part of it at SF2 and only rezone
Yeah.
a smaller portion to A1? I mean, that's a separate request. I don't think we can do that at the table today, and I'm looking at Sarah to see if she thinks we can.
Well, it's quite obvious I wouldn't put cows and horses in the fenced area around my house. So that only leaves the field property that I'm baling hay on right now. which is about 12 acres.
But we have to have a legal description for it before we can move forward with it.
Yeah, that was about what I was about to say. Whether or not we technically could, having the legal description would be necessary.
I mean, you can table it if you want to and go back and create a legal description for something that you want to try to rezone other than the entire track, and we could put that revised legal description on the next agenda if you want to do that. If you think that's better.
Can I say what I would prefer to probably see is I would prefer to see, if you would like cattle, us add that in to be a conditional, because right now you're saying that they could have horses if we granted a conditional use. I would prefer to see cattle added to that, maybe, as a conditional use, but instead of rezoning an entire 17 acre. I feel like when we get these properties zoned SF2, it's a win because that's the comprehensive land use plan for that area. So then it does feel a little bit like going back for me, but at 17 acres, like Jim said, you could have cattle. So I would rather see that as an option as opposed to.
Well, that would take an amendment to the ordinance.
Correct, and
we would have to set the conditions for what we wanted for cattle to be there as opposed to horses.
And I think, speaking to his point, is that other people, once we go to SF2, they are counting on us to protect their property values, that is now SF2 and it's not going to go backwards. Where I would say, a residential estate, I could go that step back, but that's not going to help from where you're at because you can have horses in a C2. So.
Do we know when this became SF2?
No, that was the question, yeah.
Well, excuse me, my neighbor, real estate agent, Mr. Griffin, told me that they got that rezoned, I believe, because they were going to put a subdivision there on that 40 acres. And it never panned out. And so that was the reason that it was rezoned. So when he sold me half of the tract, or not quite half, but the 17 acres of the tract, I didn't know that it was SF2 and I couldn't do this. So anyway, that's when it was done, I believe.
I think you're right. I think that's why it was rezoned SF2, so it could be subdivided, the entire tract, including what the school district purchased too. So. But that was before 2008 and everything changed.
I was going to say, because I don't remember that one, and I've been on here almost 10 years.
I don't think we've seen a preliminary plat for it, but I think we got it rezoned, but I don't think we ever saw a preliminary plat. Went through preliminary plat stage? Could be. There was a lot of them that we got preliminary plats on that didn't go any further. Yeah.
Mr. Hager?
Yeah, again, probably doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. The codes are the codes. We're just concerned, again, not with Mr. Sharp. I think he's probably got all great intentions, but again, who's coming after him? And it's just too wide open now, the way this code is written, for us to ever come on and accepting that. And, furthermore, I'm an old farm boy. 17 acres is not a lot of room for horses and cattle, so you'd have to really limit anything that went in there from a livestock standpoint. Otherwise, you'd have all kinds of aromas and issues with fertilization and manure and so forth, and the things and runoff and so forth that come with that. So it'd have to be really limited in use if we even got to that point. So we have nothing against Mr. Sharp and his plans and his intentions, but we're just really concerned about what would come afterwards.
And of course, with 17 acres, you can't, Mr. Sharp knows you can't put a lot of livestock on that. And I don't think that's his intention about what he's saying there. This was a 40-acre tract. You bought 17 acres of it.
Yes, sir.
So it was going to be a subdivision. It's an SF2, which we've already gone through this before, and on an SF2, the minimum standards are 70-foot frontage, so that thing could have been full of little houses on 70-foot frontages. But he's got a very nice house that kind of is a buffer to these other nice subdivisions that are in there, just in case the other part does get built as SF2 with smaller houses. So
Right, just because it's SF2 doesn't mean it's smaller houses. The
Well, its
one
minimum
across the
standard is
street
70-foot frontage.
But look at the subdivision across the street, it's SF2, and it's,
And it's very nice, which
Yes,
which is
which
what I'm
can
saying
happen.
is that SF2s can be very nice
Yes.
properties with larger structures on them, so,
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
yes.
I heard what Ms. Sparkman said, and I addressed this to her and to the commission. If my client, I know you can't put a condition on rezoning that says, well, you've got to restrict it to this or that, but I think an owner can put restrictions on his property voluntarily. And so my question is, if he would come back with a recorded restriction that cannot, you know, that restricts his property to a certain number of livestock, is that then a case when this commission could go ahead and rezone it?
well,
you answer
city
that.
does not enforce private covenants.
I was about to say, it wouldn't be the business of the city to do that, and I don't think that that's something that y'all could really take into consideration when deciding that.
It's like covenants on a subdivision. The city does not enforce the covenants that the developer puts in a subdivision.
Well, I wonder, though, if it might be palatable
Talking about a deed
to the
restriction.
neighbors
Yeah.
that we would restrict the number of livestock.
Question is, do we want to vote on it? Do you want it to move forward with it with the vote as A1? Do you want to come back, you want to table it, come back with a revised legal, what's your choice right now? You have the full piece of property rezoned back to A1 question on the table tonight.
Right, I understand. So your choice is to let them vote either yea or nay, or table it and come back with something less.
Well, like I said, I can't put it on my fenced area, so it's only the field, so we might as well vote on it.
We'd like for the commission to go ahead and take a vote, please.
All righty. Could I have a call for the vote for the issue?
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Mr. Covert, roll call.
Compton,
No.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney. No. Mueller,
No.
Parker,
No.
Benado,
No.
Howell.
Yes. Does not pass 5-2.
You have the right to appeal the planning commission's decision. You have to file that appeal within 15 days and indicate in your appeal why you think the planning commission's decision was an error, and you have to notify the adjacent property owners again.
Okay, thank you.
Next item on the issue is R18-26, Neely Homes Incorporated, 3903 South Gene George Boulevard, from SF2 to MF24 and C2, presented by Engineering Services Incorporated.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not engineering services, but I am the purchaser of the property.
Okay, wait, back up. Do you have authorization from Neely Homes Incorporated to represent them tonight? Jason does, okay. We gotta have Jason stand up here beside you. Let him start and then
I'll
you
let
can
Jason
comment.
talk.
Okay,
That's fine.
technicalities.
Jason Apple with ESI. As Mr. Taldo said, he has this property under contract, and we are requesting that this property be rezoned from MF24, or from SF1 to MF24 and C2, and we will answer any questions.
Staff comments?
The comprehensive land use plan indicates medium density and commercial use for this area. The rezoning request is in keeping with the following goals and policies of the comprehensive land use plan and is recommended for approval. Multifamily housing should be developed at a density and scale that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and available utilities and roadway capacity. Larger multifamily developments should be located on sites with adequate space for off-street parking, accessory structures, and recreational activity, and toward the edge of single-family residential areas where higher traffic generations and taller building heights can be better accommodated. Improve the city's economic base and tax structures through the promotion of healthy, stable commercial concentrations, assure adequate land allocation for commercial areas of sufficient size and in proper locations, and encourage the development of a wide range of commercial development for the area.
Is there any comments from the audience on this issue to the commission?
You want to let Philip say something?
Yes, if he wants to, go ahead.
I learned a long time ago, if there's not objections, don't say anything. But I will say that we are planning very quality, upscale development, apartments. We feel like the demand is there with all the development along Jean George Boulevard, the new, of course, y'all know what they are, the new, across the street, the new Highlands Oncology building, 5-story building there. Other things are kind of in the works now for that area right there too. And then of course, we've got the ballpark, the Children's Hospital, Sam's, and then there's 5-story physician's tower that's, has that come before you all yet? It's already come before you. And it's to meet the demand for housing for the area there. We feel like it's convenient to the interstate people needing to go, and it's not going to put a big burden on infrastructure. There's adequate infrastructure there already, and we're requesting a positive vote on this, please.
Any other comments? Well, I am so ready to get a multifamily construction that is very pleasing, that sets the standard for where we want to go to, the high-end side. I'm ready for that, and I think Springdale's ready for that too.
Yes, sir, we agree.
Yes, sir, Mr. Conlon.
Philip, I really applaud your effort. This is a distinctly important issue for us. That area, as you know, feels rural. It feels like you're away from downtown. It's got a lot of potential for us in the future, and it does sit very close to the ballpark and very close to Children's Hospital and the medical center that will be there. It's a real important project for us, so nobody better than you to do a job on that. So,
well, I appreciate that, and we take development in Springdale seriously. You know, we've done 25 to 30 developments in the city, and we're proud of every one of them.
My only question is, what portion is C2 and what portion is MF24?
The little piece at the
Just
front,
that little piece?
That little piece on the front is the C2. And there are 2 legal descriptions on the application.
Okay.
That sets those apart, yes.
This will be a call for the vote.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote from Ms. Haney. Roll call.
Covert.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Panado.
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Compton.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Staff will prepare the ordinance. It goes to council on the 26th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is R18-27, Greg and Anna Young and Linda Young, south side of Don Tyson Parkway, east of Savannah Lane from A1 to MF4, presented by Greg Young.
Mr. Young is in the back. Mr. and Mrs. Young are back there. Would you wave? I'm Charles Harwell. I'm here on behalf of the Youngs. The property is subject to a real estate contract conditioned upon approval of rezoning. The request that was presented in the petition asked that it be rezoned to MF4. We're asking tonight to reduce that to MF2. The intention of the buyer, which is Riggins Construction and Development, is to put upscale duplexes on this property. I have a diagram. I realize that it's not necessarily binding on anybody, but it would show you the kind of density we're talking about and potential layout of this, the use of this property. You're welcome to take one and pass it on. These duplexes will have 1,800 to 2,400 square feet per unit. So it's going to be upscale. The rental price will be $2,000 a month, probably. It's going to be similar to the executive style duplexes in Harbor Meadows. Right now, this is a site that's underutilized. To the east, there's a couple of mobile homes. To the west, it's a very nice subdivision. It's, of course, on Don Tyson Parkway, which is a very, very busy thoroughfare these days. And so the use of this property would be consistent with a mild density and compatible with the adjacent property there. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has. I've got pictures of what duplexes might look like, but again, there's nothing binding about that. The reality is the developer will do this right. So any questions from the commission, I'd be happy to answer those.
Staff comments.
The comprehensive land use plan indicates low-density residential use for the area. The MF4 request, which would be 8 units per acre, is not recommended for approval. To downgrade the request to an MF2 zone would allow for duplexes, got to get there first, single-family dwellings, townhomes, and duplexes only at a density of no more than 4 units per acre, which is the same as an SF2 zone. So staff would recommend approval of that of the downgrade to an MF2.
Are there any comments from the audience? And I would assume that there will be. So we would like for you, when you come to the microphone, if you'll state your name and your address. And if the comments keep getting redundant from one to the other, then you know, we can probably don't want to go that way. But everybody is afforded to come to the mic and speak. So if you'll just come up to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Mr. Chairman, are you all right with putting one of these up here so that they can see the new plans up there?
Thank you. My name is Tom Skipper. I live at 3738 Waycross Avenue in the Southwind Terrace subdivision. First of all, I want to thank each one of you for your involvement in helping Springdale head the right way, and appreciate all the work that you guys do, and especially Patsy. I've dealt with her many times, and she's a trooper. We've had a few situations before that Patsy and I have dealt with, and she's always been very upfront and honest with us, and we appreciate it. I would like to say this. We've got several residents with us. Is it okay if they ask them to stand? Not all of them are going to talk. For some reason, they've twisted my arm and asked me to be the spokesperson. But these are our neighbors in Southwind Terrace subdivision, and appreciate all of them. It's kind of amazing. All right, y'all can sit down. It's kind of amazing. We don't even have a property owners association yet. This is the type of turnout we get. So it's a very cohesive neighborhood, and we're all there to help one another and promote Springdale as well as Southwind Terrace. Thank y'all for accepting our emails, and several of you replied back, which I never expected that, so thank you so much for that. And you know, as I was driving here tonight, I pulled out on Don Tyson Parkway after a few cars came by. Fortunately, I got there before Tyson let off work. So, and I noticed, and I actually drove to the east the other day on Don Tyson Parkway just to see if there was any multifamily use down that strip. I haven't seen any yet. It seems to me that everything is single-family residential. Now, there's a change in the degree of price per property, I'm sure, but it's still single-family residence. And what I've found is that people that live in single-family residences take better care of their property typically than other situations. So for us, we think that it's going to be a kind of a negative turn for our neighborhood. And I know we had one of our former, I don't even know if he still lives here, came to us one time and asked if, or came to you all and asked if he could put in multifamily properties up on Raymond Lane. And Raymond Lane's just east of Ham Lane there, and this body denied that request at that time. And so we were we were glad to hear that you all saw that what we were talking about was very important to us to keep it single-family residential in that neighborhood. What we're looking for is a consistent policy. You know, when a person makes their decision to buy a property, they need to kind of know what's going on around them. And of course, a good realtor should not know that and tell them that, but every once in a while, we realtors, which I used to be, kind of slip up and kind of miss some things. So it's very important that things remain consistent in an area so that a homeowner making a decision to make an investment there knows what's going on around them. We think that if an exception is made to the land use policy, that it could open up other possibilities. There's a lot of kind of open land, even though there's single-family residences across the street or across Don Tyson Parkway from us, that would be prime for someone, some developer to come in and try to develop that and put multifamily there. So that's a concern that we have. There's also a traffic issue. Those of us that pull out onto Don Tyson Parkway every day, we don't need to see any more cars. We've got enough to deal with as we come out of there. And then last, I would say that there's a prime example in this town of a situation that happened a long time ago. None of you all were involved, where a single-family residential subdivision was constructed, really beautiful place, and then all of a sudden, right next to it, it got rezoned, and it has now become kind of an unsightly place to go up and down the street, because I went over there the other day just to see if anything had changed. And so it affects not only our values, but it affects the entire area because of what this could open up to other possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ken Rotzel. I live at 3947 Savannah, and somehow I missed the block party. So anyway, I live just south of where that proposed property is. If you'll look at the map, there's plenty of room to the east and to the south. It's open land. And like Mr. Skinner said, once you start making part of it multifamily, there's a lot of property there that can go multifamily. And I would just like to ask, I mean, I moved in 10 years ago, and I'd just like to ask this commission to help us keep our property values and to disallow this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gary King, and I do not live in South Winds. I live at 3367 West Don Tyson Parkway, and that is, maybe 500-600 feet east of this property, on toward Carley Road there. And I don't approve of this making the density any more than single family. And the reasons have been stated already, and that's the traffic and the quality of the neighborhood through there. And the traffic, I think, is something that I hope that you all will look at that carefully for anything that comes before you. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and everybody, probably 175 or 200 houses there, plus those on Ham Drive up there. We all have to get out there on that thing. And so denser residential is not a good idea there, I don't think. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tommy Sugg. My wife Jennifer and I both live at 3853 O'Hara Terrace in Southwind, and we also would like to say that we object to the rezoning proposal due to the fact I think most of the factors have been mentioned already. Obviously, one that I researched personally yesterday prior to sending the emails to each one of you, and I want to say thank you, both of you, all of you, for your service. But, you know, there's both sides. Some will say it does not affect property value. We have been homeowners for many years, and we have seen when the encroachment of multi-family properties do downgrade the property. We have been recipients of the downgrade as far as home value. So we would say, please continue to hold the integrity of the homeowners in that area of Southwind Terrace. Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be a first for you guys. I'm Kevin Riggins, and I developed Southwind Terrace, and quite honestly, I'm the potential buyer for the property. There are friends out here, longtime close friends of mine, that live in Savannah, and I built some of their homes. And I'm going to say right now that I had the intent of buying the property because I thought I was going to upgrade it from what was there. So, you know, it was a little rough. It's been kind of, you know, just kind of a rough place for a long time. So I thought doing some upscale duplexes would be better than what was there. Our intention was, I have a partner, March Branch. We were going to own them and maintain them and take care of them ourselves. I'll let y'all make the decision to vote one way or the other. You know, I don't want to offend any of my friends. If y'all feel like it's best for the city, that's great. If you don't, I'm okay too. Because friendship, I'm not here just to make a buck. I can promise you that. Like I say, I thought it was a better than position to have that than not have it. But if y'all feel it's not, then I'm totally fine with it.
Are there any other comments from the audience?
We did get some emails that I can read, or we can just by agreement put these into the record from Elizabeth Chenal, from Pat Chenal, from Greg and Pam Joyce, from Mike and Rhonda Bartholomew, and from the Greg Taylor representing the Willow Bend POA. And if you want to, we'll just put those into the record. Okay, they'll go into the record as part of the comments that's on this rezoning request.
Yes, sir. Do you have any more
I
comments?
don't have anything else. I wanted to be able to hear what was going
To the commission?
So with the change going from MF4
From MF4 to MF2.
MF2, we go from 8 in an acre to 2,
4 an acre.
or to 4 in an acre in an MF2, which is exactly what it would be if it was standard.
If it was SF2, it's the same density. It just allows duplexes when an SF2 does not allow for a duplex. It could be single-family homes. It could be duplexes. The lot sizes in an MF4 for a duplex is a 70-foot of frontage with 10,500 square feet. In an MF2, it's a 90-foot frontage with 12,000 square feet.
It's to the commission.
The only thing I'll say is that out of one of the points that was made was being consistent. And we just approved a MF24 that's not very far from this. And the reasons that this commission liked it because it was near the ballpark, near Sam's, near the Children's Hospital. And it's hard for me to look at this one and say we should not do it to this, and we did it right down the road, and everybody actually applauded. Hey, we're going to have some great multifamily. So that's where I'm a little bit confused, is I think that both of these pieces of property, both the one that Philip just talked about and this one, they're talking about doing the same type of thing, right? A higher end, a duplex with the same type of density. So I don't know. I just don't see how that's.
Well, I think on my personal opinion on something like this is that we do have our comprehensive land use plan, but we need to really be strategic where we place things in those. Even though it can fit in the plan, it may not fit in that piece of property to the best use for the citizens of Springdale and for Springdale as a whole. So when we look at these things, and we have an area like at the ballpark, I think that's a chance where we, as a city, can see a nice multifamily complex that is going to be designed and built to the standards that we were looking for in that area. But like it was said here, and we've always said, is that we will zone this and think about the worst case scenario that could go in there. And Mr. Riggins doesn't have and it has nothing to do with Riggins, it has nothing to do with any builder, it has to deal with the zoning, that anybody could come in at that point and build whatever. And so when you look at the proximity of where this is and the surrounding, that's where I look at. Am I against multifamily? No. Am I Want to be strategic where it's placed? Yes. And that's what I'm looking at.
But our land use plan doesn't say multifamily or single-family, does it? It says low density, it says medium
It's a
density.
Low density and
issue.
medium density, that's right.
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 It's not a, whether it is a single-family home or whether it is a duplex or a triplex.
And you are
or
saying, you were
fourplex.
telling me that this would have the same density.
Right.
as
And
a
it could be
single-
single-family homes or it could be duplexes, but that's the only two things it can
And
be.
we call SF2 low density,
Low, medium density, and it's single-family homes only, and it's 4 units per acre.
and this is so the
With
density
no
is.
duplexes.
Yes.
That's
The
just,
only
that's my only comment.
Right, and I think that there was the change with what Patsy said is under an MF4, it was not recommended
Because it was
according
8
to our
units.
land
Yeah.
use plan, but
I
as an
would've-
MF2, it is recommended according to our land use plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
I just wanted to remind the commission, since there was a comment to this effect, that you cannot hold the fact that they do not have a design plan right now against them in making your
That's right.
decision whether to rezone.
It's just rezoning.
And
Because it could be rezoned to MF2 at 4 units per acre, and they could do single-family homes in there, and it would still be the same density as if it was SF2. It's a density issue. It's not the only difference between the MF2 and the SF2 is allowing duplexes or not allowing duplexes.
And that was my only point, is that I also agreed that 8 units per acre didn't fit. It would have been a spot zoning, in my opinion, for what's around there. With a lowered density, I don't see any reason why it's not compatible. So that's my only thought.
Did we have some more comments from the audience?
Mr. Chairperson, and council, thanks for letting us speak our mind. I have two comments
Could
to
I
make.
get your name and
Oh, I'm
address?
sorry. My name's Dr. Brett Rings. I live at 4246 with my wife, Leanne. We've been there for 18 years. In fact, bought my property from Mr. Riggins, so 20 years ago. The question that I have is from an engineering standpoint. If you look at the north end of that on the border on Don Tyson, to the west where you would come out there, it's a really high hill in elevation there that seems to me would block some of the ability to look at eastbound traffic on Don Tyson. The second thing I have, that's a swale somewhat, and the drainage from both the Carly Avenue side and the 40th Street side all kind of converge there, and it rolls through that property there. And would that be an engineering complexity that would add to some problems with that lot? So that's just my comment.
That is an issue that is addressed with a large-scale development plan or a subdivision plat when that comes through. It's
Okay.
not the deciding issue when we look at zoning. Zoning is the
okay.
highest and best use of the piece of property.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Christie. Appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Scott Culver. I live at 4324 Savannah Lane, down the street a little bit. My house is on that picture somewhere. So I wanted to address Peyton's comments. First of all, thank you for voicing those. I live there. I've lived there for 19 years. So your comment about what's the difference, kind of get that, because mileage-wise, it's probably 1.5 miles apart. But the big difference is this is built-up residential already. I drive this every single day, and I also go the other where that rezoning was done. I go through there quite often too, going to the other side of town. So here, where you have literally hundreds of families that are against this, that are represented here tonight, on the other one, you had no comments. The reason is there's not subdivisions there. There's a huge difference between the concerns that we have as a community in this plot of land and what's on the other. The other, hey, that's fine. There's not subdivision there with hundreds of families impacted. Here there is. It's a big, big difference. Those families that are impacted have strong concerns. I appreciate Kevin coming up, because essentially he's the one buying it, and him saying he doesn't care one way or the other. Honestly, I don't even know why it's still being considered. That at that point where he says it's not a big deal to me, I'm doing it for you. Appreciate Kevin's comments. Honestly, thank you, but no thank you. And I think that's the way the council should vote. Not only is it right, the developer that's wanting to buy it's now saying he really doesn't care. So I think that's wonderful. We appreciate you voting against it. The neighborhood doesn't want it. The developer's ambivalent. At that point, I think it goes away. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick thing. Matt Russell, 4194 Savannah Lane. My question is, I've heard it called multifamily. I know what I had in mind when I think of that, right? And then I heard somebody call it homes. When you come into that property, will it look like homes scattered randomly, like someone built them, or will it look like, you know what I'm saying, something that does not look like that? You know what I'm saying. So that's my question. I think he stepped out. So I'm just curious. I know we don't have any visuals.
Yeah,
You guys see? Okay.
And again, that issue is on a large scale issue. We're just voting on rezoning
Sure,
tonight.
the
So
rezoning. Okay.
We're not gonna.
I was just curious to see if there was anything else like that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
If I could, I realize that we have the entire subdivision opposing this, but when you get right down to it, it's a stretch to say that it affects property values of the subdivision that is the majority of the houses in that subdivision. I understand, for example, I know Jeff Watson owns some property right behind this. He was one of the owners that was notified. Those owners might have more of a concern, but I think those concerns can be best addressed when we present for large scale. The reality is that this is not that dense, and when you look at what it will involve, it's going to look like a subdivision is what it's going to look like. And so I think the commission needs to look at it from the standpoint of, does it fit? Yes, it fits. Is Mr. Riggins saying politely he's okay with what you do? Yes. But I'm here to tell you that the folks who own it, the Youngs, they want to see this deal go through. And their sale is conditioned upon this being approved. That's not your concern, but it's not just Mr. Riggins whose interest is at stake here, and I think that point needs to be made.
My name is Pat Chenal. I live at 3791 Savannah Lane. I need y'all to help me understand, if we rezone this, we went from fourplexes to upscale duplexes. If Kevin buys this land and then 6 months down the road gets a better offer and sells the land, how do we control that? It might not be upscale at that point.
First of all, it was never fourplexes, it's only been duplexes. Okay, and someone else buys it, if it's zoned MF2, they can only put duplexes, single-family homes, or townhomes, and no more than 4 units per acre. That's a guarantee because that's what the zoning allows. Then we have standards. We don't have very well-written standards for multifamily that is just duplexes or single-family yet.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're just not there yet.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Stephen Aldridge. This is my wife, Susie. We live at 3667 Savannah. Our property backs up to the track. And my question is, what would y'all want in y'all's backyard?
We have one more.
Hi. My name is Tanya Cobb. My husband Kyle and I live at 3769 Richmond Terrace. We've lived there for 12 years now. My comment is just that we just listened to about the property before this one, about getting rezoned for agriculture, and the main point that I heard was the potential of what's to come in the future. And so that's one of my main concerns with this, is if you open this door on this one, then what is the potential for the future?
Thank you. Last time for any other comments? To the commission.
Call for the vote.
Got a call for the vote, Mr. Covert. And this is for MF2. Roll call.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Donato,
Yes.
Howell,
No.
Compton,
No.
Covert,
Nope.
Passes 4-3.
Staff will prepare the ordinance. It goes to council on the 26th.
Thank you.
For those who don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you feel free to leave, and we'll continue on with our agenda. While they're making their way out, I'll go ahead and call for what our next agenda is for preliminary plats, replats, and final plats. It'll be a RP 18-04 replat Harbor Meadows Phase 23, Block 42, presented by Engineering Services Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Apple with ESI. I just want to make sure I had a preliminary agenda on the lot split for the Neely Homes property. Was that a administrative item?
The Neely property?
Yes.
We're going to do that administratively.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right, go ahead.
So we're here asking for a replat of this lot. It's adjacent to, or it's in Harbor Meadows, north of 412, kind of on the northwest side of 64th Street. Planned for commercial lots for this area. And we'll answer any questions.
Staff comments?
Need to identify the zoning of the adjacent property, show the location and names of all streets, note the total linear feet of street being dedicated per street classification, show instrument numbers of offsite easements, and all comments from utility companies and other city departments must be addressed prior to approval. And then the engineering department has some questions concerning that will be addressed through the construction drawings. So those issues will be addressed through those.
Anybody in the audience have any comments to this issue? To the commission? There's a motion. Motion by Ms. Haney.
Second.
Second by Mr. Covert. Roll call.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Donato,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
If you want this replat to go to council next Tuesday, the ordinance needs to be in our office by Thursday at noon.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is a large-scale development, L 18-17, Powell Street Apartments, east side of Powell between Sisters and Fink. We have a variance for modification of multifamily design standards presented by Engineering Services Incorporated.
I don't mean to steal Jason's thunder. I just wanted to make you aware that the Foghorns applicant is here. The Foghorn C1815 applicant is here that we had called earlier.
We'll come back to him.
Good evening. I'm Blake Murray with ESI.
Do you have any comments?
I can just kind of walk through this large scale with y'all if you want. This was approved a couple of years back, requested an extension, still hadn't started construction. They're ready to get going now, so we were told we have to go through the process again. So here we are. It's the exact same layout. We are requesting, or we already have the zoning that we need. We're getting the additional units per acre based on the green space provided in the middle of the large scale. It's just a large apartments throughout this entire development. We're requesting a variance with it, which I believe is part of this, for everything related to the building that planning had issues with, the vehicular and pedestrian circulation and access, and then the requested parking spots by planning were like 6 less, and it was decided that that was the ideal number to have the maximum park space available.
Staff comments?
The land time needs to have an actual description, need to pin all corners, and all open storage areas must be screened with an 8-foot opaque screening fence. Screening fence is required in accordance with Chapter 56, and all comments from the utility companies with other city departments must be addressed prior to approval of construction plans. Let's talk about multifamily design standards. You're making, a connection, you did make a connection to Powell Street, so this could connect to the Razorback Greenway, which is across the street.
Yes, ma'am.
So the connectivity to the regional trail, other than you don't have a painted sidewalk across the street itself. And we probably need to go to traffic committee to see how that gets addressed, to put that connection across through there. You have 2 tot lots and you are combining them into one.
Yes, ma'am.
Staff would recommend that those be separated, but that's something you guys have to decide. Can you explain to us what you mean by tot lots and where they're gonna be?
It's just one large playground area with benches, seating, all that around, instead of having 2 separate ones. I mean, the whole thing is basically one big playground anyways, for lack of a better word, but if needed, we can separate it. It seemed like an ideal place to combine it, make it a little bit bigger.
Okay, and then the materials used on the structure itself, they're going to be, can we get to the elevations of those? I was gonna see if we could get them up here. Okay, so you have vinyl siding, and what kind of vinyl siding are you using? Are you using a higher, as we just had on the previous project, talked about a higher quality vinyl than?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is it specified on there so we know that?
It is not specified on here. We can get it on the final one.
You get it on there so we know. Okay, and you have 50% of brick, and which is an accepted material or a recommended material, and less than 50% of the vinyl on there, right?
Yes.
Okay, the other thing that we have is the break in the roof lines. Do you meet the requirements for the break in the roof lines?
Sorry, was that a question?
Yes, that was a
okay.
question.
I'm not 100% sure. Jason might be able to speak to that.
You have one peak in the front where you have that little bump out, right? And in the back, is there a similar break in the roof plane on that side, or is it just flat?
On the back, so the front, yeah, that is the front and the rear elevation.
Okay, the top one?
Yes.
The top one, you have 2 breaks in it. Okay, the bottom one, the one in the middle, what is that? What view is that?
Right there. Or the middle, that's the 2 sides. So they're both basically mirrored each other on the side elevations, and then the front and rear is the top one, and then the 2 sides would be the center picture.
That's the center of the building? That middle one of the back side?
No, that's the 2 sides, the 2 ends.
ends. Okay, what's the width of that?
So it is 162 feet long.
Okay. That
Total.
comes back to the question of a break in a 100-foot roof plane. You don't have any, 50 feet, I'm sorry. You don't have a break in that
In
on
the
the side.
So it's approximately 80 feet in the center.
Okay, I'm just pointing these out so that you all know that's what we're talking about, okay? Y'all decide if that's acceptable or not.
So is it or is it not? We don't know?
It doesn't have a break in it. Aaron, you want to help me out here? I'm struggling. Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be a change in the roof every 50 feet, and it doesn't have one.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. I didn't know where we came down on that, whether it was
I
good or
wasn't-
not. So.
I wasn't clear because in my mind, I knew what I was saying, but I'm sure it wasn't coming out
No,
exactly what
that's perfect. That's
I was
what I
thinking
wanted.
about.
Yeah, it's a 50-foot standard for a change in roof plane. So there's a 2-fold requirement, and this is just for the commission's education on that requirement because it's pretty detailed. There's a wall requirement and the roof plane. So we do the front facade as one, and then the roof plane, like an imaginary, as long as they break that, either by a gable, a jut out, some kind of distinction in it, then we try to meet that 50-foot requirement. They're almost there. It's just that middle gets a little bit of a distance in there. So.
We get an adjustment made to that?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole building's 160 feet long. We got 40 feet on each end and 80 in the middle. So if we adjust those gables around or add a gable, we can make that work.
Okay, that goes away. Lighting plan, I think we talked about, I think there's good lighting in this project. We're trying not to create any dark areas again. Danny, did you have any comments on the lighting of this one?
Before he jumps in there, like the comments we said early, kind of exact same replica.
Exactly. If it meets your ideas, it would be fine.
Well, this creates that large open area in the center. And what kind of lighting are you doing in that large open area? People are gonna be out at the tot lots in the evening and walk back to their living units. Is it well lighted enough to do that?
Yes, ma'am, there will be some wall packs.
Okay, is there lighting in the, can we go back to that drawing itself?
So is there lighting in the playground area? Is that what
Right.
you're asking?
That's what I'm asking. See, it has a nice playground area in the middle, but see, you have lighting all around the streets. That's what we're looking at, right?
Correct.
Is that lighting sufficient? Because it doesn't show that you're showing any lighting into that area there.
Correct. The trail is lit up around it, but you're correct. We don't have any lighting.
The trail is lit up around with bollards around that?
The parking lot lighting will suffice for the trail that's adjacent to the parking area. We can add some lights along the trail, that north-south trail on the eastern side to light that trail as well, that walking trail.
Okay.
And just like we were talking earlier from the commission, when you guys approve these multifamily design standards, you know, you wanted that pedestrian grade level lighting. You put a whole page chapter in there for staff to kind of review that against. It's a challenge for our developers to kind of meet this because it's a couple of requirements. They have to put the lumen requirement for the streets on there and then actually get that kind of, it's really hard to show if you have wall packs or anything of that nature. But that's what you guys have asked us to evaluate as staff, and that's what we're looking at. So we want a pedestrian grade feel. We don't want a blinding LED in the background so that they see shadows or it casts shadows on other things. You know, a tree casts great shadows when you have those street lights. Anything becomes that way, and that's exactly like what we want to kind of avoid from our safety and security standpoint, which is a lot of our concerns in the city of Springdale in these designs. Honestly, materials, whatever it is, the lighting is key to these developments coming out correctly.
So is this going to be accomplished?
Well, I think we need to sit down and talk about this one a little bit further to make sure we don't create, and Danny, I think you need to sit down with us and make sure that we don't create. Danny has the crime prevention through environmental design certifications. I think he can help us accomplish that because we don't want to create areas that are unsafe and uncomfortable for people to be in.
Anything else?
Aaron, am I missing anything? We've had a lot of multifamily designs coming in, and it's really hard for us to get through all the details on this. This is getting more complicated all the time, so.
So,
Go ahead.
so in the packet, it says they're asking for a blanket variance to all variations from design code, but that's not, we're not doing the roof gable, that's not.
That came off of it,
That
right?
came
You're gonna
off.
take care of that extra roof break.
And then what?
Right. We're gonna leave the tot lots together to create it like it is there. You're gonna adjust the lighting plan so that we have adequate lighting throughout the site. Okay. What else have we got?
So y'all want to keep the tot lots together, or y'all okay with that?
The what again?
The tot lots, to create where they've got one big area right there instead of one on each side of the play area.
Because the requirement is you have to have the two amenities. So they brought the two amenities, which are the two picnic tables, which you see in the corners there. And then the other one they chose was the two tot lots for two lots separate, but then they're asking you if you're okay with them combining. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understand what they're asking.
Okay.
Because they want to put one big one together there.
Yeah, I mean, the only advantage that I see, what's the density of these apartments, is that sometimes you have separating some of the kids rather than having them all in the same place allows for time for them to run between one and another, and also
It's around 200 foot when I measure it, scale it out. So I mean, it's, you know, that's why we brought it to the commission. The staff didn't feel comfortable on that, taking that standard for what it was, and we said, if you guys feel good, that's what we'd like for y'all to look at. So.
Okay.
I mean, we were trying to create that central green area and kind of leave as much open space as we could. You know,
Okay.
If we want to separate those, fine, you know, if we're good with the design, you know.
I wasn't 100% sure what a tot lot was, so.
It's just a small, it's
kinda
just a
was-
small
A
playground.
little bit of reason why I asked,
A
but.
small playground, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it gives room to play soccer almost, you know, we
Right,
can
right.
amount of soccer in that area, some open space areas for people to play in, that kind of stuff.
Yep. This is honestly one of our better, for the site constraints we have, for that circulation of site is key in architectural design for this, and for the focal point in the middle. You know, we're not, you know, they've asked for a few variances, we're not there because of the challenges with that, but we're getting there. So I thought this was pretty good for the common space. They have a ton of green space, which eliminates a lot of that heat island effect, gives our kids and some of our families access to clean air and light and stuff, things that we need here in the city of Springdale, you know. So it's pretty good balance in that. Like I said, y'all have a few questions y'all had to answer, so, but not bad.
Are there any other staff comments?
I think we're done. I don't know of anything else.
Go to the audience does the audience have any questions to this issue? If you'll state your name and address, please.
Ernesto Peña, and I live on 519 Fink. And I would like to apologize about my English second language. Every rain day, it's gonna get flood. I'm gonna let my daughter speak.
Whenever it's raining, there was always flooding, and my dad would call, and they would never do anything about it. And if
Well, you know, like I can ditches. Mejor.
There's-
Okay. Yeah, like on the future, like, you know, for those rainy days, you know, to make maybe good ditches for the rain. And also, I noticed, you know, I've been living on that place for 20 years. On those apartments, you know, used to be only one car, two cars, and now they got more than four. Sometimes when I get home, I can't park outside. And also, I checked about, you know, a couple weeks ago, how many child molesters. A mile from my house, there were 7. And now they're gonna put, I don't know how many families behind my house.
Okay, the drainage is being addressed with the drainage plan that they have. They're putting detention on the site to hold the water so that there's no more water than there is today. Drainage is being taken care of, and they can explain to you how that's going to work. They are required to have minimum number of parking spaces for each parking unit. And can you tell us how many parking spaces you have on this lot?
Yes, ma'am. We are about like just 3 or 4 short. The required parking spaces is 257, and we are providing 248. So we're just slightly short, which we've increased that number since the original one from, I think, 237 or 240 to 248.
So they've addressed the parking very close to what would be required for that.
Okay, and also something else. It's a school close to my house, Jones. In the mornings and afternoon, it will get traffic all the time. And I think, you know, with that many cars, with those apartments, I mean, I know it's gonna pass, but, you know, they need to find maybe a way to find maybe a different place to go, the traffic, you know, on Powell.
Well, from the school, their only access is off of Powell Street, and this apartment complex's only access is going to be off of Powell Street too, yeah.
Yeah, because,
I always play with my dogs outside, and my neighbors, they have 5-year-olds playing in their backyard. And when there's that many people behind you, if that many people is going to live behind you, you feel unsafe. And I think that putting this much families behind you and will also bring criminals and crime, and I'll feel unsafe.
thank you.
Thank you for your comments, which is another reason we need wonderful lighting in this area. We need this to be as secure as possible. Yes, ma'am.
I'm at 402 Sisters Avenue. My house will be they will be right behind my house. And we are gang infested in that area. So lighting is very key. I assume the parking lot's going to be on the outside of it. I hope the parking lot, and that's going to face my property if I understand. So I hope to goodness that's going to be lit up. I understood when they started putting all of those apartments over there in my area. I'm in a house that Mayor Van Hoos, I think that's who it was, he said it was a courtesy for them to put up a privacy fence. Well, we would all be killing each other if we didn't have our privacy fences. And I live in fear of, well, what if one day they decide they don't want to have the privacy, they don't want to keep those up anymore. So is that still just a courtesy to have a privacy fence around those properties?
What are you all proposing for fencing?
I believe that was one of y'all's comments, was to provide a privacy fence.
Right.
And is that are they obligated to maintain that, or is it still just a courtesy that they're
They
doing
have to
it?
put it on their property, they have to maintain it, yes.
Okay.
And the streets are in the center of the apartment complex, not on the outside edges.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The street is the interior around it, and then the apartment buildings themselves are on the outside, so that you won't have traffic at your back door.
Oh, okay.
But you will be backed up to a building that will have a privacy fence. And they show, does their landscaping, you show some trees along this side over here?
We have trees behind us, and I'm wondering if you're going to cut those trees down.
Ma'am, while he's looking for that, could you give us your name and address, please?
Sandra Crane, 402 Sisters Avenue.
Thank you.
I thought I did that, I'm sorry.
Most of the trees and shrubs are all located in between the buildings and parking lot or in the park area. Oh yeah, there you go. There are some trees shown that are existing, I believe, on that western property line, northwest.
Sorry. Patsy read it off real quick earlier, but there's a staff comment on there for the screening requirement, which
Right.
is a combination of fencing requirement and trees.
So you're going to try to they are going to try
Yeah,
to
it has-
maintain the trees.
Yeah, an
Keep the
8-foot
trees.
opaque screening, and it has to show the trees that goes with it in association with chapter 56.
Okay.
So there will be screening.
Now, just to make sure I'm clear, are you asking about existing trees on site or new trees that we're putting in?
Those trees behind us?
Because there is vegetation there.
Right. I would hope that you would be doing some landscaping also.
Yeah, so they're probably, I think you guys are gonna grade the site, but then you're gonna add traditional landscaping like new trees. And they have the type on there, and if you guys have questions, we'll be more than willing to come sit down, you can come to the office. But they have to maintain a screening requirement and landscaping around the whole perimeter because it's a multifamily to a single family use, and we have a higher screening requirement.
So when you say screening, that means try to keep the trees that are there.
That's a fence and new trees, or they can use the existing vegetation, but they have to prove to us that it actually provides that effect.
Okay.
So that's up to them.
Drainage and water running.
Yeah, but those trees behind us, I'm asking if they're going to keep those. Where would those be? Okay.
Big ones.
The big ones are on our property. And the drainage that they address, the drainage is horrible.
Right, and they are addressing the drainage. They are
Okay.
putting detention on site, and they are
And
addressing the drainage.
detention is the detention pond, and mosquitoes are horrible over there. Is the city going to do anything about the mosquitoes?
Well, the pond is not designed to hold water for long periods of time. It collects it on large rain events, and it has a length of time that has to dry completely out. It's not going to be a pond there all the time.
Okay.
And the city does, I assume they're going to do spraying this year like they have in the past. I don't know. I haven't heard if they are or not.
We don't ever see them spray over there on our dead-end street. We feel forgotten. Did you have any questions?
They've been spraying downtown, I've seen them, but I don't know about their street, but.
Yeah, I don't either.
they're
I
out and
haven't,
about,
I haven't,
but-
I don't always notice it, but.
Sometimes we'll get a request from a resident, they may have
No, the mayor was still here.
about the spray, and we'll not spray if we get those kinds of calls in an area.
Okay, so
Otherwise
to
we do.
ensure that we get sprayed, do we need to call your office?
Yeah, from my office, we'll relay that to public.
Okay, and I have another thing. There are very, very unsightly trash bins. I look at other properties and theirs are enclosed and they look very nice. I have to go down my street and I see mattresses on the ground, and it seems like everybody just wants to dump all their stuff in those dumpsters. Why on earth can those not have a enclosure around them and make our side of Springdale look better?
This will be required to have an enclosed dumpster location. All of the new projects have to have those.
And what about the old projects?
No, we don't have any way to enforce them on the old ones, but we do all of the new
There's
projects.
nothing to do about that because it looks awful.
You call code enforcement when there's
And I have
mattresses
done
and
that.
stuff. Yeah, you need to call them when it's not being
But
done
how do
for
we
you.
get it changed? Why can they not put an enclosure around them?
You have some council members sitting here that would be a change in the ordinance to go back and make them be retrofitted. So that would be
Okay.
something they would have to discuss, yeah.
Okay, okay. But anything you can do to help the east side of Springdale, it's a ghetto, and we're full of gangs. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience? To the commission? We have a variance for a call for the vote for the variance.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Mr. Covert.
Parker,
Yes.
Nato,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Have a motion for large scale.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments.
We have a motion by Ms. Haney.
Second.
Second. By Mr. Byrne.
Nato,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is large-scale L 18-18 Professional Cabling Solutions, 2300 Ford Avenue, presented by Bates and Associates.
I'm Jason Young with Bates and Associates. It's a 9,000 square foot warehouse for a professional cabling company that installs internet cabling, fiber optic, and stuff in buildings. They're going to have an office and room to store their equipment and supplies. I did receive comments today. There's just a couple that I can address. Most of the comments were drainage comments. We'll be able to clear up with the final large-scale review. There was a comment about streetlights. There's an existing streetlight across the street that was put in, I believe it's a relatively recent development for Linden King, and they did all of their street improvements. So as far as street lighting, I believe that that meets the code, even though it's across the street, that will satisfy that requirement for, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that satisfies the requirement for it.
How close is it?
It's directly across the street.
Okay, you need to show it on your plan then.
It is shown on the plan. It's shown on both sheet 2 and sheet 3. There's also some kind of light on our side of the street, but I believe it's illuminating the property to the west. I don't think it would provide any illumination to our site, or it would be minimal if it did.
What kind of parking lot lighting are you putting in?
We haven't proposed any parking lot lighting. That was by the request of the developer. I'm sure that's something we can work out.
So you're asking for a variance to not light the parking lot?
We don't have any variances being requested right now.
Okay,
We
so
are
right
going-
now you're going to have to meet the lighting standards then, okay?
The other comment that I saw just quickly was, there was a question about the boundary. We are going through a informal plat process that establishes this boundary for this site.
Okay, all drives and parking areas are required to be paved. Are you not showing all of the drives and parking area paved?
No, there's gravel in the back. What happened is we weren't able to meet the notification deadline for the variances because it comes earlier. So we're going to have to request the variances for the next planning commission.
Okay, so you're going to ask for the drives and the parking areas to be gravel as well as the storage areas?
Just the storage areas. We are going to have to pave where you can see the fire lane that goes to the west of the building. We are going to have a hard surface for the fire lane turnaround. The rest of it, we will request to be gravel storage area.
Including those parking areas that are there on the side of the building and the area in the front?
No,
You're
ma'am.
not going to pave those?
No, ma'am. The parking area to the west of the building is going to be asphalt, and then the rest of the parking area is going to be concrete. And then the portion that's just northwest of the building, that is gravel. There are bay doors there for.
And what kind of stuff will you be storing outside?
I do not have an answer to that question.
You have some stormwater drainage issues that you have to address from engineering?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe other than that, the paving areas are the only other major comment that we have. And the open storage area has to be screened with an 8-foot opaque screening fence. And I see you show landscaping. Do you have a fencing on there too?
Yes, ma'am. There is a fence that goes along, starting at the end of the parking spaces that are on the west of the building to
And it's
screen that storage area.
And it's an 8-foot opaque fence?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So the paving areas, you'll have to either have them paved or you have to come back with a variance request?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Is that all the staff comments? Are there any comments from the audience on this issue? It's to the commission. So you've got asphalt paving on one side and you got concrete on the other. And then the gravel is just on the backside?
Yes. And Mr. Edwards is here. He says that we can do all concrete.
I'll just do all concrete.
Simplify
I won't
it.
do any asphalt. We'll just do all concrete. We'll have gravel, and the only reason we're doing gravel is because they have track equipment that they move around on site. That's what they do their work with track equipment.
Could you talk in the microphone, please, Mr. Edwards?
Yeah, the company has track equipment and it tears up concrete, and I believe I called up, talked to someone,
Yeah,
and they,
you just have to apply for the variance to get it done. If they didn't apply.
okay, all right, that's fine.
What's the square footage of the building?
9,200 square feet, roughly.
10,000 square feet?
Yes.
So they need track equipment to load and unload? Is that what it's for? Or?
No, they actually have track equipment that they do work with, like a dozer. And if you pour concrete, then they can't move it around on site because it busts the concrete up.
Right. So they're storing the equipment back here? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
they do store equipment back there.
Okay.
That part we're not voting on because
Right, they didn't
there is
apply
no
for
variance.
There's no
So-
variance.
So what we're voting on is them completing it as to the comments.
It has to be done to meet the standard that we have now for them to
Okay.
move forward, or they have to come back and ask for a variance.
So they still need a lighting plan, and they still need a variance for this, so they're gonna be coming back to us. This will be a motion.
Motion to approve, subject to staff comments.
Motion by Ms. Haney,
Second.
second by Mr. Covert.
Powell,
Yes?
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Panado.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Next item are Board of Adjustments. It'll be a B 18-23, Gerald and Felice Barnett, 1921 Ford Avenue, variance for reduction of front setback from 100 feet to 83.59 feet. If you'll state your name and address, please.
I'm Wayne Van Hook. The situation was discovered during surveys and doing our title work that the building was built some years ago, was encroached on the 100-foot setback about 16.41 feet. And it's been there for 30-something years, 40. The little office building on the front of it, and it encroaches by that much. So we've notified all the neighbors, got all the cards back, and we haven't had any resistance to getting the variance to allow that to be in the 100-foot
And the
setback.
100-foot setback was set by the plat itself. It's not a zoning requirement, it was a plating requirement that evidently was encroached on several years ago.
Excuse me?
Encroached upon several years ago.
Yeah, many years ago, 1989.
I think that's, yeah, something like that. It's been there that long, but it creates a cloud on the title now, and so it needs to be cleared.
Yeah, this title issue, because it does encroach, so we needed to have y'all's blessings on it, even though it's been there forever. But and it's like, say, about 16.41 feet, and it's a 100-foot setback, so it's not a great issue.
You have any comments? To the audience, does anybody have any issues to this request? To the commission, this will be call for a vote.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Mr. Covert.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Panado,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes, passes 7-0.
Thank you all very much.
Next item on Board of Adjustments will be B 18-24, EcoSite LLC, 2894 West Sunset Avenue, variance for deletion of landscaping requirements, presented by Steve Vega.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and it's Steve Zaga. It's misspelled with a Z. It's all good. Steve Zaga, Cypher, Crouch, Clark, and Harwell. I'm sorry, I misnamed my firm. Crouch, Harwell, Fryer, and Ferner, 111 Holcomb, P.O. Box 1400, Springdale, Arkansas. Mr. Chairman, we are back here on a variance request that we sort of submitted 2 months ago. I believe that the commission, most of the members of the commission were here then. As you consider our request for a variance on landscaping requirements, which is what we're asking for tonight, I'd ask you just very briefly to consider 4 things. The site is located kind of right there in the elbow on the north side of the building, and as you can see from the picture, overhead picture, it's shaded on the left and on the bottom. In order for us to comply with the strict requirements of the code on landscaping, we would have to tear up quite a bit of asphalt and concrete. You can see that from the overhead. As you can also see, where this is particularly located, it won't get a whole lot of sun. In fact, it'll be shaded most of the day, limiting the species we would be able to use back there for landscaping. As you can also see, or if you're familiar with that property, that is the Harps main store on Sunset. That is their loading and unloading area, and it will, more landscaping would naturally decrease the utility of the loading and unloading area. And finally, I would point out to the board that there will be opaque fencing there. In other words, around the bottom of the tower, the site plan calls for opaque wooden fencing. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we'd had some positive interaction with staff on this, and without putting them on the spot, I'd ask them, Patsy or Aaron, if they could make comments as well.
Staff comments?
Well, this is a little unique in that the only time landscaping is actually discussed in connection with a self-supporting tower or antenna is in the definition where it says they can vary in their design and may include panel antennas mounted on or painted to match existing buildings, communication equipment, housing an architecturally integrated tower element in a shopping center, rooftop antennas, screened with walls, and freestanding pole antennas screened by landscaping. There is nothing else in the ordinance that indicates what that landscaping has to be. The requirement under supplementary regulations for self-supporting towers says that there has to be vegetative control so that you don't get weeds growing up in and around the tower. So technically, in this location, there's really not a place to put landscaping in connection with this tower at that location. Staff recommends that the variance request be granted.
Do we have any comments from the audience? To the commission?
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Mr. Covert.
Covert?
Yes.
Haney?
Yes.
Mueller?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Panado?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Compton?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you so much, and thank you to the staff.
Next item on the agenda for Board of Adjustments will be B 18-26, Cesar Pinedo, 108 Midland, variance to increase fence height from 3 feet to 5 feet, presented by Cesar Pinedo.
Good afternoon. My name is Cesar Pineda. I'm here, I live in 108 Midland Avenue, here for a variance on a fence. And the reason I'm wanting to do it is because safety of my kids. I recently moved there a year ago now. When I first moved there, it was all good. But I had people, I work night shift, and my wife works day, but she comes late with the kids. And she said she had, not the first time, a couple times where people go knock on the door, like late at night. And she's the only one there. And the reason I want a fence is because, so I have a dog outside, so it'd be more of an alert or a way to have a way to call faster. And she said one time she came out of work when, the garage is on where you see the drive. she said she saw somebody just run out to the backyard. I don't know. She called me at work to go home and stuff like that. And I've have asked my neighbors if they've seen anything, because sometimes I've been at home and they have knocked, went outside, nobody's there. They have told me before that there were some juveniles around there. I don't know. I really don't know. I just moved a year ago. I'm pretty much doing it just for my kids and my dogs, because I had a dog before that was brought, so I just gonna shave his hair, cut his hair, and he got loose. It was my dog, and yeah, I had problems because I had the pet control come over and left me a note, but I took him back. No, I don't want no problems. And my other dog, he's home. He don't go out, but I just want him so he can be around. And pretty much, the main thing is just for my kids. I want him inside, because I do go outside and work a little bit. Sometimes I do get distracted. He likes to run around. He's a little 2-year-old. He did it one time. Don't want it more than one time. Don't want it to happen. So pretty much, yeah, this. And I'm not, what the yellow part is, I'm not going to do it like that. I'm just going to do half of it. Like where the the garage is, it's just going to go like this, just half, pretty much, because the other side is already fenced. I don't know if there's no way to show you.
You have a 3-foot fence already around.
4.
You have a 4-foot fence already?
It's not fenced at all. The ones I want to fence is not fenced at all. It's empty. But the thing that the way the house is built is that it's 108, but it's on this side, but my mailbox is on this side, on the other side, the other street where my driveway is. So I usually just come in from the driveway, just use the garage. I usually never use the main entrance.
Staff comments?
We did receive one comment, and I don't know if it's in your packet or not, from a David R. Evans, who is at 200 Midland, and opposes the various requests to make the fence tall.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
You'll have to forgive me, I was outside and I may have missed part of this, but will we still have access to the front of the house? Will the driveways be gated or anything else? Okay.
I was told when I came here, they said that I would need to have a door. So like when they go check for gas or water, I will have a door for them to go in.
Do we have any comments from the audience on this issue?
Are you putting up a privacy fence?
No,
Okay,
chain link.
Chain link, okay.
Yeah, you can. It won't. I thought about it because I know if you come from this side, you won't be able to see who's
Right.
coming from the other side of the street. So I mean, it is chain link.
Yes, ma'am. If you'll come to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
I'm Betty Shackford. I live at 4200 Croxdale, and I would like to submit my neighbor's opposition as well as my own to this fence. Do I have to read all of these?
Well, if you'll just hand them down here, Will. You want us to just, there's several.
And I think you have received emails from David Evans.
Yes.
And what about the Hobbs?
The David Evans is, I think, is the only one that we have.
We
received.
got Hobbs too. It was in our packet.
Okay.
I think, or it may not have been in the I got an email somehow from Sarah and Roy. I don't know if it was in the packet, but.
3, 4, 6.
Real quick, I'm just unclear exactly about where we're talking about for this fence.
I
Maybe,
think he
is
wants
there-
to enclosure your whole yard. Is that what you're wanting to do?
No.
The front. Go show us what you want.
Short.
Opposition to it right here.
You know, see, there's the garage with my driveway. This is the main door. I'm just gonna do this. That's it.
But it will go across the front of your house.
Yes, but like it shouldn't bother nobody because you can see everything. It's just a chain.
So it's a chain link?
Just to prevent my dog getting out, or I have kids before because I had my dog on this side, and there's a stop sign where the kids come off from the box, and sometimes I had a puppy, they'll go and pet him, but now he's getting bigger, and I don't want no problems, you know.
So you're just wanting to come off the edge of the house
Yeah.
right there. You want to come down a certain length.
Now that one's bigger than the other.
and then come across to the other side or the back end of your house, tie it in back here.
No, he's going to
Got
the,
it measured already. It's already marked off. Already marked off,
You know,
and it's
my-
right at the street.
Yeah, I think
The-
you did, the
the
first one you did a
utility
little bit
people have
smaller,
already
and
been
then the
out.
second one you went all the way down to the street.
For the other fence, I just want to, together.
How far down onto Midland
Um,
to the street?
what do you mean?
How far down from the house is it gonna come?
I was just gonna get to right there.
So you-
This is the, drain where the water
Right.
comes out, but it floods right there, so that's just,
So basically, you wanna fence in your whole front yard.
pretty much.
a 5
There
foot.
is not any houses like that in our area.
And you're asking for a 5-foot chain link fence. Is that what you're asking for? Okay, well, it says here, you got a variance to increase the fence height from, and if you'll go to the mic, that way we can hear you. If you want a variance to increase the fence height from 3 to 5, there's no fence there right now.
No, it's
Okay.
empty, yeah.
So you want a 5-foot chain link fence?
Yes. I know the law is only a 3 foot, but 3 foot one, my kid will jump the 3 foot and the dog would too.
Here,
The reason mainly is just because I don't want my kids running around, or my dog actually running around with nobody, you know what I mean? And I'm tired of picking up trash. I don't know, some people at night just throw
So in
bottles
order,
and stuff.
if he didn't want a higher fence, could he fence that in his property line?
He could put a 3-foot
He
fence
could
up
put a
in there.
3-foot
Just
fence
can't
around.
Put it up to 5. He has to meet the setback requirements all the
Right.
way around, but, yeah.
Do you know what your setback requirements are
Oh,
on
I
that piece of
don't-
property?
No, I don't know.
Well, you'd have to get with the city and find your setbacks, that distance they are before you could fence.
Will,
Okay.
will a 4 foot work? Like, but
No.
that's what the other
No,
side
the-
is.
The ordinance is a
Only
3-foot.
3 foot.
Front can only have 3-foot fences.
So it won't be able to be a
Well,
4,
it
that's it?
depends on how we vote on this tonight,
Oh, okay,
okay? But right now, the ordinance is 3-foot.
okay. So what would we do from now? So
Um,
I don't know.
We'll get some more does anybody else have any comments?
May I add?
Yes, ma'am, you sure may.
There have been a family in that house that had 3 children and raised 3 children in that house, and they had a dog, and I don't think there was ever any problems. And they didn't have a fence. It will not look good in our neighborhood. It will be different. And we have, he's had a sign out, or the city has had a sign out, and we have had people driving, reading the sign. It said, that don't even live in our neighborhood, and said it would ruin it. It wouldn't look good. But now, I have to ask you again, did you not tell Mr. Pence that you wanted a wooden fence?
It's chain.
Well, regardless, we do not need a house in our neighborhood that we've got to look at that's different. It will, where we've driven around, no one else in the whole area has their yard enclosed. And we all object, and if we have to go further, I will go further.
Thank you for your comment.
This is just a few of the names.
Yes, sir. You state your name and address, please.
Douglas Schultz, 4208 Shawnee Cove. This house has a fence in the back, either 3 or 4 feet, just like all the other houses in the neighborhood that have a fence. This is where they keep dogs, and this is where the children play. There's no other house in the whole area that has a fence in the front yard. And I agree with this lady, it's not going to look very good. And first thing you know, if we have this, then everybody's going to start fencing in their front yards. And it was my understanding when I moved in that area that you could not have a fence in the front yard. Now, that may be incorrect. But anyway, I'm very much against adding a fence to the front yard, whether it's 3 feet or 5 feet.
because he does have an ample fence in the backyard for his dogs and his kids. And as far as someone coming up to the front door, he can do just like me. I don't answer the front door. And I've got an extra lock. I don't have any children, but I do have an extra lock where the children could not open the front door. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the audience?
Hey, Debbie.
If you don't mind, I will speak for Mr. Pence.
Okay.
Okay. He has been frightened at his front door by this man with a machete. Have you not been at their door with a machete?
Ma'am, can we not, yeah, we don't want to.
If there have been any threats of violence, that would be a matter for the police department. I recommend you file any report with them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but that was at the beginning when
Okay, let's,
told them
yeah,
that.
we'll nip that in the bud right
Okay.
now. Any other comments to the commission?
So my concerns, I mean, first off, I think we allow that for a fence. We don't really know what kind of fence we're getting. So that does change the character of the neighborhood and can set a precedence. Chain link, it definitely, I think, will give a commercial look when you go to that height in the front yard. And then I have some concerns as far as the sight line on a corner like that. Even fence, opaque fencing, chain link fencing, there's still the line of the bars depending on where you sit and being able to see past that.
So the
But
question.
have some issues with something going around the perimeter of that house.
So the question is, a variance to increase the fence height. There is no fence there. So I'm assuming there's no POA in this area. So would he or any other property owner be allowed to fence their front yard?
There's nothing that keeps them from fencing their front yard as long as it's not any taller than 3 feet.
Okay.
He can do that. He just can't increase it to 5 feet if you don't approve the variance request.
Okay. So that's what we got on the table.
Question is whether or not to allow him to put in a 5-foot fence.
So I need a call and a vote for this variance from 3 feet to 5 feet.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote.
Haney,
No?
Mueller,
No.
Parker,
No.
Benado,
No.
Powell,
No.
Compton,
No.
Covert.
No.
No. It passed, or did not pass, 7-0.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda for Board of Adjustments is B 18-27. Please forgive me for Douglas Lasting. There you go. Hey, yeah. 2787 Elm Springs Road, variance for deletion of paving, the rear parking lot presented by Doug.
My name's Doug Vlostein.
Like it.
And
your address?
Well, I live in Rogers.
Fine.
But 9100 Summershade Road in Rogers.
Okay.
I purchased this property at the 3788 Elm Springs Road about a year ago. I did a lot of improvements there. I submitted pictures of the way it looks right now. I paved the whole front lot, and I put up 8-foot chain link or 8-foot privacy fence around the whole back of the perimeter. And I'm asking for variance on paving the back lot. I'd like to leave it gravel. I put a good base, gravel base down, and that's why I'm here.
Staff comments?
What do you use it for? Is it for vehicle traffic and parking and moving forward, or do you store materials out there? What do you use it for?
Well, it's leased right now to a person that has 4 FedEx trucks. He stores his equipment back there. I never see him come or go, so I'm not sure what he all does. But he does have a vehicle parked back there behind that fence. That's the extent of my knowledge of it.
Okay, so you're asking for a total waiver, not an extended period of time to pave the back portion within 2 years?
Yeah, I'd like to have a total waiver of it if possible. Yes, ma'am.
Any comments from the audience to the commission? I did go out there today, and it's paved very well. Everything up front, parking places are neatly painted. The fence is up. Fence is in great condition. Looks new.
Yeah, it's all brand new.
And it really looks good in that area.
But I think for vehicles, we've required the fencing, which is part of the, I mean, not the fencing, but the paving, although we have given some people some time to comply with that.
What is this place have customers come in and out?
No, it does not.
Okay, so the front part that's paved is just going to be for?
That's future, I mean, I did that because, actually, I did that because I really didn't know who was going to lease it at the time. I figured that front part would be used as an office building or something like that.
Okay.
Right now, the person that leased everything, and all he's using is the back part, and that front building is just being used for his personal storage. Yeah, like I said, there's very little traffic going in there at all.
But you could lease it to someone differently that could use it to park all kinds of things in the back. Your current renter doesn't use it, right?
Right. And it's leased for 10 years, so. Now, there is properties across Elm Springs Road that almost all of them have gravel parking lots in the back and vehicles parked back there. So.
This is a question just for my education. So if we grant the full waiver, we don't set a time limit on it, and he someday sells the property, does that go to the new owner as well, or would they have to come back at some point and revisit it and say, you give them a certain time, or is it just simply waived for whomever owns that property from now till the end of
If
time?
you waive the requirement, you're waiving the requirement for that piece of property. It's not like a
For
conditional
perpetuity,
use.
correct?
Right. It stays with
We
the
need to
land
get him a
itself.
mic back there, because I can't hear half of what he's
I
saying.
know. He said the same thing I said.
Yeah.
Yeah. It stays with the land. And so it, the
But, I mean,
next,
we had a property close to Pleasant, and the same thing. They were leasing it out for somebody who was parking trucks on it, and were made that they had to pave it. And I think, I mean, I can see going with new and allowing some allowance for time to pave, but waive the paving altogether. We're asking other businesses to come in and build according to our ordinances and regulations.
So what would be the area behind the fence? What's that, how much area would that be roughly, Doug?
see the area that he's outlining there? That's
Yeah.
the area we would be looking for you to pave, because that's where the vehicular traffic would be.
Yeah.
Any place that you park vehicles or vehicles drive on, that's what has to be paved. Does that have bay doors on the side, or?
Pardon?
Does that building have bay doors on that side?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so the area in front of those bay doors where you would be
Well,
taking vehicles in and out should be
And I
paved.
mean, he has 4 FedEx trucks today, but tomorrow he could have 10, however many fits, right? There's nothing saying that he's only going to have 4.
What, if we did it on a time, is there a typical time that we normally do?
Most of the time we've done with bill of assurances for 2 years.
2 years?
And in 2 years, if he's still operating at that same,
And he would request again?
we could ask for an extension or have it paved in that time frame. And we actually file it as a lien on the property, so that in 2 years, if it's not paved, we can either call the bill of assurance, or you can come in and ask to have it extended.
I think me personally, I would be a little bit more comfortable with that, just because I know that probably the investment that you've already made with paving with
Right, right now I
asphalting.
can't do it, I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, the fence and everything, that I think it would, you took what was not a very pretty building and have, putting it back to use. So I think I would be more comfortable with just kicking the can for a couple of years and and
that's what we've done in a lot of cases.
and come back and see.
That would be
Because again, if it doesn't cause any significant problems with code enforcement or neighbors or anything like that in 2 years, then maybe we approve it for another 2 again, I don't know.
Would you be willing to amend your request for a 2-year bill of assurance to not pave any for?
Yeah.
Okay. So the variance would be allowed for no paving with the execution of a 2-year bill of assurance. You will need to come by the office and pick up a form and sign it and bring it back, and then we'll file it.
Okay.
So the item on the
That-
table we have is a 2-year bill of assurance not to pave this area, and this is a call for the vote.
Call for the vote on the 2-year bill of assurance.
Call for the vote by Ms. Haney.
Parker,
Yes.
Benado,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Next item on Board of Adjustment is B 18-28, Larry Gibson, 2600 Truett Lane, variance to increase height of accessory building from 16 feet to 18 feet, presented by Larry Gibson.
I'm Larry Gibson. I do live at 2600 Truett Lane, and we have built a pool and an adjoining pool house that's just off the northwest corner of our property. When we built it, you won't see it on that picture. I brought some pictures. I brought some pictures in with me. I don't know if you've got them, if they're in their packet or not. But anyway, when we made the plans, when we drew the plans for the building itself, we wanted it to. The brick emulates the color of the brick on our house, as does the grout. The design of the brick around the windows and the arches and all that emulates the way they look on our house, as does the pitch of the roof. Subsequently, because the pitch of the roof is 812, it brings the top peak of the roof to 18 feet instead of 16 feet. When I turned the plans in to the building department, it was actually would have been made it 20 feet. We ended up looking at it and decided I didn't know that 16 was what the ordinance called for. But all we were trying to accomplish in this project was to have the building that we're built, right next to our house, as closely emulate the lines and the architecture of our house as closely as it could, and that's what we've done.
Staff comments? No staff. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address this issue to the commission?
Just a quick question. Did you build this, Mr. Gibson, yourself, or did you have a GC or somebody build it for you?
I'm the GC.
You're the GC. Okay.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a contractor's license
Okay.
of a licensed contractor that's
So you
that's
went full
supervising
building
it.
permit?
Yes, I did.
Gotcha. Okay. And so the reason I asked that question was I still believe we have a huge gap in our GC population where they should be, in order to pull a permit, should have to sign off on the fact that they understand what the code calls for. How many times have we seen a Mr. Gibson come up here, whether it's a pool house, a shed, it's a tree house, it's a whatever, and the answer always comes back the same, which is, well, I guess we just forgot to tell them. And there has to be some better answer to that than just continuing year after year to say, well, there's some better way. I don't know how Mr. Gibson was or wasn't told, and I'm not pointing fingers. My point is there has to be a better way than continuing to make people come back through these variances, taking up the time of the commission, taking their time away from their family to come back over 2 feet of a building when we could have simply said, when you sign off on this, you as the city are hereby notifying them of all rules and regulations that they have to meet. And if you can't do that, then say so. But if you can do that, then how do these people keep coming back with variances because they built too high or too long or too big, and we can't seem to find a way to fix that? And once again, that's just a personal opinion. I feel badly for them. I feel badly for us that we have to go through this time and time again. I'm just not sure what the answer is, and I'm looking for a little bit of education on it.
I'm not sure. Is Mike over there? And you want to,
standard on an accessory structure is that there's boilerplate on the permit that's issued to the individual, but nobody reads that. It's like all the other boilerplate that we put out. I mean, it's there, it says, you know, it has to have a setback, has to be this setback, and accessory structures can't be greater than 16 feet. But nobody reads that, to be honest. I mean, we have builders that build many houses, and they go, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that.
Well, we get the same
and the
issue
code
with
book, and in
sidewalks,
their
too.
defense, the code book is about that thick, and I spend hours every day and still don't know it all. So
So I guess to answer your question, we try to get it out there.
But we do keep, I mean, to Roy, we see the
Yeah.
same, this is the same
Yeah.
thing. It's not like, it's always 2 foot on a pool shed or something.
And believe me, I understand what the code is. I mean, I know how thick it is. I know it's not fun to read. But I just wonder how many years we're going to go through saying, well, it's a thick code book, and nobody ever reads it. I get it. They get it. But there has to be a better answer than just continuing to run around in a circle and say, I'm tired of running in a circle. That's what we do. We run in a circle.
I appreciate your consideration for my time, I really do, but I will tell you that this is far more than a pool shed. This is a considerable structure and has cost a considerable amount of money. All I'm interested in here is getting on with it. Where
Sure.
I
And I
can
don't think
time to
anybody
stop
has any
paying.
hang up on that. I feel bad, like I said, I feel badly that we continue to make citizens like yourself come in and go through that.
Well,
There
Ed-
just has to be a better process.
Ed's seen the structure, and I mean, this is not a backyard barn.
Exactly.
By any stretch. I mean, this is a lot of building and a whole lot of money. And you're right. I mean, to be held up over 2 feet of pitch, in my mind, with regard to all I'm trying to do from an architectural standpoint is make it. You know, I'm not going to build a 412 pitch on a building next to a large house that's 812. It makes no sense. And that the only hang up I've got with being here is that it just that.
Right.
It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So.
This will be a call for the vote. If there's no more
I'll
comments.
call for the vote.
Call for the vote, Ms. Haney.
Miller,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Donato,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Go back and do Foghorn.
We got one more here.
Oh, no, we've already done.
Oh, we've done that one.
Got
Did
the
we do that
Foghorn
when we
thing.
did House
Yeah,
Street?
we've already done both of those.
Okay.
I was actually here, and there were so many people I couldn't get in.
Oh.
I got passed right by it, so I'm still here.
Well, let's go back to our public hearing conditional use, be C 18-15, Foghorns, 101 West Johnson Avenue, use unit 44 mobile vending on a site in the downtown form-based code neighborhood center type 1 district, presented by Lee Collins. Come to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
Jeff Hodges, 1708 West Sunset. And I think all we're doing here is trying to get the food truck hours extended past the normal code.
Okay, so right now, it says it may not operate between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. How late do you want it to be?
9 o'clock at the latest.
You want to close at 9 o'clock at night?
With the
Okay,
food truck,
you
yeah.
can't stay open past 10.
I wouldn't want to.
Okay, so you're not changing anything. You're just allowed to be at that location as a permanent location.
For
so
more
you-
than 3 hours. I
for
believe
more
that's
than
what we
3
talked
hours.
about, more than
Right.
3 hours, correct?
Right. And it's the same conditions that we had for the other one. Can't operate between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Health certificate is required. You have to display it. No obstruction of pedestrian or motor vehicle traffic flow, no obstruction of traffic signals or regulatory signs, no vending upon a public way, no sound devices that produces a loud and raucous noise in violation of the city ordinance. Sites to remain clean and free of paper or refuse of any kind generated from the operation of the business, with all trash or debris accumulating within 20 feet. The vending stand to be collected and deposited into trash containers and must meet fire code requirements. I did notice that you had some propane tanks that were being set in the landscaped area that's adjacent to the trail. We need to keep those off of there too.
Okay. They should just be right next to the back of the truck.
Well, the other day when I was over there, they were sitting in the grass.
Okay.
Well, seeing that there's nobody else in the audience, we'll ask anyway, is there anybody in the audience that'd like to, our fire department would?
Actually, you can't stack your extra containers right next to your truck. And there's a hydrant sitting there adjacent to that building where this truck located. And then just to, so y'all are aware, in the 2018 IFC, it's going to address mobile vending trucks. The other thing that they're required to have is suppression systems above their hoods, be 10 feet away from any structure or property lines that we'll have to start looking at.
To the commission, this will be a call for the vote.
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote by Mr. Covert.
Panado,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Compton,
Yes.
Covert,
Yes.
Haney,
Yes.
Mueller,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Staff will prepare the resolution, and with the mayor's concurrence, we'll take it to council next Tuesday.
Planning Director's report.
This Thursday evening at 5:30, there will be a public meeting at the Shiloh Museum to talk about housing in the region. The Walton Family Foundation has contracted with a group called Enterprise, and they are looking at housing conditions and needs in the region as a whole, and holding stakeholder meetings and all kinds of different groups to talk about the housing issue. And the public meeting for Springdale input will be Thursday evening, again, as I said, at 5:30 at the Shiloh Museum. Tomorrow night it's at the Rogers Public Library at 5:30. This evening it was at the Bentonville Community Center, and last night it was at Fayetteville. And it gives you an opportunity to go in and talk about the housing concerns of the region as a whole and providing adequate housing. Let me just read you a little bit off the flyer. It says, the Northwest Arkansas region is growing with new residents arriving every day to fill our jobs and contribute to the regional economy. Developing a regional housing approach is, wait a minute, is critical to ensuring that communities in Northwest Arkansas increase access to opportunity through housing investments and the related policies. Creating great neighborhoods and high-quality housing creates pathways to opportunity for everyone. Please attend the public meetings to learn more about the housing trends in the region and provide feedback on housing challenges in your community. And it goes on to say, did you know that 27% of Northwest Arkansas residents are cost burdened? They spend 30% or more of their income per month on housing. Cost burden affects families across all income groups. 16% of homeowners and 40% of renters are cost burdened. More than 1 in 10 cost burdened Northwest Arkansas housing experience housing insecurity. They are low income and spend more than 50% of their monthly income on housing costs. Affordable housing benefits your neighbors, teachers, firefighters, nurses, sales clerks, food processors, service industry workers, etc. So they're looking at this as a regional basis, and I know we've been talking about this, so it's an opportunity to bring some experts in to get some information about this on a regional basis. So I want to make sure everybody knows that. We'll send you a reminder of this. This flyer has been translated into Spanish and to Marshallese. Melissa's put it out on the city's website, on the city's Facebook page. It's been put all over the region, but I encourage everybody who can to attend the meeting on Thursday evening. Our next work session will be on January. Time goes really fast, but it's not quite that fast yet. How about June the 19th at 5:30? And I think we need to continue to look at the housing, the single-family residential. It's been sent out to all of the council members and to all the planning commission members. And so far, I don't have any comments back, except from the fire department. They've got a couple of comments. So look at them again, have your comments ready, so we can get this thing moving forward, because I think it's an issue we really need to address pretty quickly.
We actually really need to get this thing, comments from everybody, whether you have comments or not, it really needs to be addressed by this date. We kind of tentatively set a date of end of May, but things have happened and that's not going to be realistic. But I think this date will be realistic, that everybody can make a comment. If you're not going to be able to be there for that night, at least give a statement to Patsy, to Kevin, let them know that you have read them, you have comments, you don't have comments, but we need to make this a June 19th hard deadline to make sure we get this thing rolling. And we would love for our city council to be there. Every member of city council is invited to the June 19th work session. So, and I would like for Patsy, if she would send out an invite to them also.
They get sent one every time. But we'll make sure they get one
and
this time.
emphasize, and I may get on there and emphasize myself to please join us on this. We've got to come together on this. We cannot continue that if we see something that we have issues and then the city council overrides it and we're just, one's over here, one's over here. We've got to get a unity somehow. And this would be a good place to get the unity. And so I'm hoping that that can happen.
I was going to say, just because the accessory structures came up, do have 2 or 3 alternative methods of using with accessory structures. If y'all would like, I can quickly present those at the next work session if you want to slot a little time for that.
Because it is an issue that's coming up more and more, and that's
Yeah.
a change in how the developing community is going to.
I can't prevent someone from building something out there on that, but there are some other methodologies that are just as restrictive that kind of work a little bit better, maybe with increased setbacks, letting the height go higher, you know, things of that nature. But if you're interested, I can present those really quickly in the next session.
Anything else, Patsy? All right, we are adjourned.